ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between? My name is Ashton Gene Lewis, and I got a current crisis going on right here. I may have been hacked. We'll see. Only time will tell. I'll tell you this much right now. It's 3, almost 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm recording this podcast. So if I got hacked, it's going to have to wait until I wake up later today. Anyway, this is week 6 of the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, which usually has other sports involved with it, but as of right now, my only capability is for me to watch every single play of every single week of the NFL season, and then tell you what I think about each, kind of like recap what's happening, and then also tell you, kind of like recap what's happening, plus give some analysis of what I saw happened. And it looks like one of my things has gone horribly awry here. We're just doing a sound check. The else in between. My name is Ashton. All right, that's good to know. Everything is still there. Just that's why we have the starting window, Ashton. That's why we do the starting window to start the podcast. Anyway, I'm trying to do like 50 billion things at one time, and none of them are coming together. Most of them are just tweeting out the link to the show, which, by the way, I didn't tweet it out last week, and somehow we got a record high number of viewers, which for this show is not saying too much. That's 18 people watched the show last week. So I think if I do it faster, more people will watch. I think that's the science that everybody says behind it. We'll see though. I'm gonna try my darndest, folks. I got access to my old Broke Boy Sports Podcast Twitter account, and somehow also got logged out of everything on my Google account suddenly, which makes me think that maybe somebody else got access to my stuff. We will see. Anyway, it logged me out of the Broke Boy Sports YouTube channel as well, but I'm still logged into my original YouTube channel, which they have 2 separate emails. So hopefully, if they got my regular email, they didn't get the Broke Boy Sports one. We'll see. Only time will tell. I got other stuff to talk about, though. Most of it is football. Actually, all of it is football. Thank you for joining us here. Shout out to all the boys and all the ladies and gentlemen out there, and then of course all my they them royalty as well. We're taking it from the top. If you don't know the format of this show, I guess I'll explain a little bit as I push the mic further away, and I also switch to the main view for the NFL season preview. I keep this show relatively simple. Every single game is broken up into 4 different categories, if I recall. So it's Snooze Fest, which are the most boring games of the entire week. There's the Oh My category, where something interesting happens. So not necessarily the main character being the team that won, or the most interesting thing being the team that won a game that was surprising. It's some stuff that could be a precursor for stuff to come down the line, which is a lot of what's in the Oh My category today. And then the Heartbreakers. We're starting to get into that point in the season where some of the teams who have 1 win, there's a bunch of teams that have exactly 1 win on the season so far. We're in week 6, so having 1 win in week 6 is usually bad. Bad for your morale, bad for other things. And you start getting into the Soul Crusher category, which is the category of you watch the game and it looked like every single person who is out there playing the sport that they've played since they were a little kid and are getting paid a lot of money to do it does not want to be there. They'd rather be standing on the side of the street than be an NFL player right now, which does happen every once in a while. So I think that is important to note. And there's one team in particular that feels like they're at the top of that list as of right now. And the other category is that this is what we're here for. So if you don't know what that one is, those are the games that I've said it before, and I think I like the phrasing of those are the games that I believe actually make people NFL football fans. So they're games that are so wild. They're games that have such amazing plays throughout the course of the game, not one individual amazing play. If you see me messing with my shirt, it's because I don't know, something weird. I think I dried all my clothes on the wrong setting, and now they're a little bit tighter than they're normally supposed to be, or I gained weight. Who knows? I only worked out like twice this week, so if you're a fat guy, you know what the deal is. Speaking of which, our who, like Snoop Dogg says in that one clip on Breakfast Club, our who player of the week is a guy who's bigger. I wouldn't call him fat. He's a big guy because, I feel like a lot of you guys call people who are in the NFL fat while they're also significantly faster, stronger, more agile, and more flexible than you are. So, Anyway, let's take it from the top. Let's take it from the top. I'll get through the boring shit quick. I promise. Let's talk about the snooze fest games. I don't even think I'm going to look at my notes on most of these. So I watched the Steelers play the Cleveland Browns. The Steelers actually played terribly in this game, and I think some of that has to do with we got code in the chat already, so the bots are up late at night. But I think some of that has to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the way that their offense works. Like, if they're not able to run the ball, they can't really throw it down the field very successfully. But one thing that is getting more interesting as the game goes on for the Steelers, as the season goes on, they're finally 3 years into his time as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Darnell Washington, as he draws closer to whether or not the team is going to decide to extend him, is finally starting to get passes thrown his way. Isn't that crazy? They spent like 2 years with this guy who's significantly larger and a little bit faster than most of the guys who are on the field, and they just now decided that they're going to start throwing him the ball right when it's about time to decide whether or not they want to pay him a bunch of money, which will be really funny because they could have figured this out a while ago, regardless of the quarterback. But hey, the Steelers are now one of the 21 personnel teams in the NFL. If you haven't been keeping up or paying attention, there's a conglomerate of teams that are exclusively, vast majority of their plays are run out of 21 personnel, which is double tight end essentially. My bad. I take that back. That person in the comment, I just couldn't see it. So, let me see. Sorry. Hooday. This is a Bengals fan in the chat as well. So that's pretty cool. And then they said the Steelers defense looks old, which is interesting because I could say that they look old at times, but for the most part, they've come up pretty big. Like they played. Spoiler alert. This is Friday morning, so I've already watched Thursday Night Football. They looked pretty decent in the first half of this one, but for the last 4 games, they've actually looked pretty good defensively, especially considering how little help they're getting from the offense. When they played against the Browns in this game, although I wouldn't say that that's like a measuring stick of your personal success, because they are starting a rookie quarterback who basically got thrusted into the starting role when the Browns decided that they are not interested in winning games, and Joe Flacco got them just a little bit too close to winning games, right? So what the Browns got going on right now, what the Steelers had going on in this game, they were like, Quinshon Judkins is really good. We don't know if Dylan Gabriel is really good. What if we force Dylan Gabriel to show us if he's really good? And then Kevin Stefanski, in all of his grand wisdom, and maybe this will pay out later on down the road when they play against teams that don't have as good of a defense, but Kevin Stefanski obliged and gave Dylan Gabriel 52 pass opportunities. Watt looks washed. Mims almost completely shut him down. I will say this, and I love how it's jamming over the top of the Snooze Fest games. When it comes to TJ Watt, I have a friend who's actually a Steelers fan, and he says very similar things about TJ Watt, which is really funny. I think sometimes when you spend vast majority of your career carrying a team that's not very good, and then they finally get good towards a time period where you're not looking the best, it makes people forget about the times where you carried the team when they sucked ass. But I think that's another thing too. TJ Watt's still very good based off of what I've been watching with my eyes. I wouldn't say that I'm a football expert or anything like that. I just watch the games, and I have a little bit of knowledge when it comes to football, and I study the game. But TJ Watt's still doing the thing. He did the thing to Dylan Gabriel a couple times out here as well. The other thing is he's got help now. They got Tyler Higbee out there looking pretty good. Cam Hayward is still doing his thing. By the way, his brother caught a touchdown pass in this game, so that was pretty cool. But back to what we're talking about, they kept it pretty simple. They decided they were going to make the rookie quarterback not only beat them by throwing the ball, but make him beat them by throwing the ball while he was under pressure. And as you can imagine, 52 pass attempts for a rookie quarterback against a slightly above average, maybe on a good day, a top 10 defense in the NFL, resulted in the results that we see here. 23-9 was the final score. The Browns defense, as they have all season, they showed up and they showed out, man. The biggest issue was stopping Jaylen Warren. There was nobody consistently doing that throughout the course of this game. There was a couple times where they kind of, passing wise, they tried to press the action a little bit, because it seems like this Steelers offense is set up everything using the run and then try and bomb it down the field. And sometimes the bombs turn reverse course, which is what happened on Thursday Night Football, and it kind of set the Bengals up to go out there and get that win on Thursday Night Football as well. But 23-9 final score in that one. I'm done talking about the Steelers because it's in the snooze fest category for a reason. It was boring to watch that game, and the Steelers play pretty good defense. It is interesting watching Jalen Ramsey play safety because there's times now where he just like legitimately just gets straight up beat playing defense, and I think it's because he doesn't have the opportunity to get his jam off, but he switched to safety because of the change that is going on with him physically, that I think all of us go through at some point or another, and some of us more so than others. You know, as an elite athlete myself, I cannot relate to losing athleticism because I never really had it. Moving on, another boring game. The Raiders played the Tennessee Titans, and I hope if you watch this game, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if you watch this game, you have bigger issues than I do, because I'm assuming you watch this for betting purposes, and if you're betting on the Tennessee Titans, bad move. But 20-10, the final score in this one. Geno, as he has done in every single game this entire season, threw an interception. I think he's up to 11. He leads the league in interceptions so far this season, which is crazy to go from a guy who was able to get the Seahawks to be a borderline playoff team to now leading the NFL in interceptions. I think environment says a lot about a quarterback as a whole, as you can see how well the Seahawks are doing when they pick up Sam Darnold. And their players are developing and getting better and stuff like that. But nonetheless, this game was... You know what? I'll even look at the notes for this one because some of the stuff is kind of wild. If you don't know, Brian Callahan, who was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, he actually got fired after this game, and it took a little bit longer than I think a lot of people were expecting. There's a good chunk of people who were expecting Brian Callahan to get fired after the Texans' 26-0 loss because that's a divisional opponent, and I think their next game was a home game. He is getting fired the week before they play the Patriots, which, if you're not understanding why that's important, the Patriots head coach currently is the Tennessee Titans head coach who they told him to kick rocks because he sucks ass, and now his team is 4-2, and his team being the New England Patriots, the team that he played for. His team is 4-2 while the Tennessee Titans can barely pass block for 3 consecutive plays without getting their rookie quarterback hit. So I'm trying to find my notes on this game, and I really hope I deleted them by accident so we can just move on. But I did not. Like I said, I'm assuming you watched this. Oh, crazy other thing. This was Brian Callahan's last game as head coach for the Tennessee Titans. He went up against Pete Carroll, who apparently Brian Callahan went to UCLA, and he was a walk-on quarterback when Pete Carroll was the head coach of USC. So they actually played each other in a weird way, which, by the way, that actually something weird connection about playing people at weird points in their lives is going to come up again later on. But yeah, Brian Callahan was a walk-on quarterback at UCLA when Pete Carroll was running the Pac-12, RIP the Pac-12, back in the day. So pretty crazy. They used to be they played on the same field before they ever met each other as coaches. Anyway, this was personally the hardest game for me to watch the entire season, and I think it's just fitting that I do the thing where you just read off things that happened in the game and you let the viewer at home understand just how bad this was. Don't forget, Cam Ward is the youngest quarterback in the NFL. He's the only rookie quarterback starting this season, who started this season in week 1. Now he is not the only rookie quarterback because Dylan Gabriel is a rookie, but that's under different circumstances. But yeah, so 6 sacks. He got sacked 6 times in this one. 3 of 12 on third down. Really bad, right? In a shit ton of, basically like every other play, he was under pressure in this one. The Titans did not score until the second half of this game. They did not score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. So I think that's great insight. You should, you as a person, I shouldn't have to talk about this game anymore, and I think you can move on with your life without knowing everything that happened in this one, because a lot of it was Cam Ward tries to throw to somebody and it doesn't work. Cam Ward overthrow somebody because he's under pressure vast majority of this game. Cam Ward is rushing out to the right-hand side, or they're trying to run the ball because they do have 2 running backs who rushed for over 1,000 yards last season, but for some reason, the Tennessee Titans have told themselves that they are a passing team regardless of the situation, and I think that's one of the biggest travesties that you have to admit, and I hope going into this upcoming game versus the Patriots, the Tennessee Titans take a long look in the mirror and they realize maybe we should put the ball in the hands of the people who are not getting murdered every other play. And to you talk about sacks being a quarterback stat. There's a game in the snooze fest category that matches up with that exactly. But I give Cam Ward a pass, because he's working with very little and he's trying to make something happen. They got 1 win this season, and that in and of itself was essentially given to them by the football gods if you didn't see how it happened. But so much of the Titans offense looks to lack like any short yardage stuff. And so it requires the pass protection to protect longer than it's capable of, and that ends up with Cam Ward ending up on the ground. So the Raiders actually didn't even play that well in this game. Geno Smith had 6 passes that he completed in this game that were over 10 yards in this game. One was for 20, one was for 20 plus, and one was for 30 plus. 37-yard pass to Trey Tucker for a touchdown. I feel like we talk about Trey Tucker every other weekend. He's a competitor for like fastest dude in the league, but we just don't talk about him because he doesn't score all that often. Anyway, I just described to you why Geno kind of, it makes perfect sense why this score is 20-10 instead of the Raiders running away with it. They're not the greatest team on the face of the planet, but I will say this one thing that is happening: Ashton Genty is starting to kind of click it all together, right? He had 25 carries in this game, which is a lot of carries, but when you're talking about getting a running back going and stuff like that, I think most running backs in the NFL, especially like the dudes that were playing for the Tennessee Titans, I think they'd kill for 25 carries, right? And he got 75 yards out of 25 carries, which is impressive considering at one point during this game, it didn't look like the Raiders actually wanted to throw the ball ever again. And so they were just keyed in on Ashton Genty. He was still breaking tackles, still finding a way to get upfield. So he's starting to warm up a little bit. He is basically like the first 3 games of the season not looked great. And then now the back 3 games, last 3 games, he's looked pretty spectacular. Some of that has to do with like the defenses they're facing off against. But nonetheless, you got to go out there and make the plays. You don't control your schedule. Right? That's what people say all the time. No team in the NFL can have an offense that struggles like the Titans and expect to turn the ball over, which is why they turned the ball over twice in this game and they got smoked. That happens. 20-10 might as well have been 45-3 if it was all being said and done. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of games where it proves the theory that sacks are a quarterback stat, but the Broncos played the Jets. So final score is 13-11, which is crazy, but I'll explain what happened. Andre Cisco, you guys know who this is. If you're familiar with him, he's a safety for the Jets right now, but he used to be on the Jacksonville Jaguars. As a matter of fact, one of the most damning moments in Urban Meyer's coaching period as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, it was a reporter asking why Andre Cisco, or if Andre Cisco played. And Urban Meyer just lied and said, yeah, Andre Cisco played. And he had 0 snaps on the snap counter because he was just trying to bullshit the reporters to their faces. And it didn't work. So, yeah. Anyway, I bring him up because I don't want to talk about this game. It's in the snooze fest category for a reason. 13-11 is the final score in this one. And I think it says everything you need to know. This is one of the international games as well. So RIP to our European brethren and sisters and theyzets out there who had to pay money to watch this game happen. I had a friend who actually was in, I think it was in London, and she actually went and watched this game. Hopefully her tickets were free. Shout out Ferris. Anyway, 13-11, final score. I was talking about Andre Cisco. His IG name is Ocho Cisco, and his jersey number is number 8. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was pretty funny. That a safety is influenced by Ocho Cinco. That makes sense. Get it? DB. Anyway, that was a distraction from me talking about this game. Anyway, The Jets defense holds the longest streak of games without a turnover in NFL history. You've probably been hearing that every single time you've watched a Jets game. You've probably been hearing that with other NFL podcasts. If you cheat on me with other NFL podcasts, I totally understand. I still love you. But nonetheless, they have not had a turnover in any game this season, and they're 6 games in. They're one of the worst defenses by that metric. That doesn't mean that they're one of the worst defenses in the history of the NFL. They are the defense that is taking the longest to generate a turnover. Don't you worry. It was actually a fumble in this game from Troy Franklin, the brother of Bo Nix. He had the ball punched out, and then the streak ended. Just like that. We'll never talk about it again until somebody wants to talk about how much the Jets suck, right? Which is probably T-minus every 5 seconds, or as soon as all the people in New York wake up. You know what I mean? It was recovered by Andre Sisco, which is not why I talked about Andre Sisco. I was on my burner account that is specifically for sports photography, and Sisco's profile came up, and then I watched the game, and I was like, oh, look at that. That's weird. In a shocking turn of events, the Jets actually score by basically gaining no yards. They get 3 net yards after they recover the opening drive fumble from the Denver Broncos, and I think this play, the fumble was like the 3rd play of this game, which I guess should have been a sign of what we were in store for. They kick a 52-yard field goal. The Jets are up 3-0, and I think this is the only time the Jets actually lead in this game. The Broncos basically did the same thing and kicked a 57-yard field goal. They had a drive where they gained 23 yards, which is terrible. The Jets get their best kick return of the season deep in the Broncos territory. The Jets go on offense to gain exactly 1 yard, and then they kick a field goal. Starting to see a theme here. Starting to see the issue. Anyway, the Broncos seem to have figured out the Jets' offense. They get a touchdown on the ensuing drive after that. They flooded the zones really well in terms of like running crossing routes across the Jets' defense and everything, and it allowed for Bo Nix to not only get time to find people to pass the ball to, but also to get deeper passes down the field, which allows for the run game to work a little bit more, which, too bad for him, it didn't work at all at any point during this game. I think the longest run from a running back from the Broncos in this one was like 5 yards. While the Jets responded with a first down sack because Justin Fields had the ball, held the ball in the pocket for 5 seconds, which is bad. Then second down happened, and then he dropped, Garrett Wilson dropped a wide open pass, a crossing route, which would have gotten them a first down. And then third down, you guessed it, he got sacked again on his own 5-yard line, and then they had to punt the ball away. The Broncos caught the Jets on a good day. Unfortunately for them, this is the second best performance the Jets have put out defensively all season. I say that the best performance they had was versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you know, I guess that's up for debate. They played them pretty close, but for the most part, it was the defense that went out there and did their thing, and Tyrod Taylor actually carried the ball. Got the ball up and down the field. I will ask this question: why is Tyrod Taylor not playing? I think we're going to have that question answered pretty soon here as we get closer to Week 10. And the Jets are still struggling to find a way to win football games. And this may be, and I say may, it's actually the worst offensive performance that the Jets have put out this season. It's actually the worst offensive performance that any team has put out this season, and 2 teams have been shut out so far this year. The Jets' offense was being spoon-fed opportunities to score, and they couldn't gain 10 yards. Legitimately, Justin Fields finishes with -10 net passing yards in this game. And it was the biggest case of I'm seeing ghost, which I guess it's like a Jets thing. You think it's in the helmets? Are the helmets cursed? You think it's in the uniform? I will say this, the Jets photographers make the Jets green uniforms look so cool online. And then I see them play and I'm like, man, what a waste of some dope-ass swag. Like the shiny green helmets, like the Green Ranger colored helmets, they look so... I guess normal people will call that green apple, but when I see that shade of green, I think of the Green Ranger from Power Rangers. Anyway, back to the Jets sucking at football on offense. Defensively, they were amazing. Like I said, he must have been seeing ghost. He got sacked 9 times. He completed 9 passes, and they converted 2 third downs the entirety of this fucking game. And yet somehow, with under 2 minutes to go in this game, The Jets were only down 13-11. That's how bad the Broncos offense was. And I say Broncos offense was bad. What it really was is that's how good the Jets defense was up front. The pass coverage was really good on the short yardage stuff. The D-line did a great job of stuffing the run from the Broncos, and they forced Bo Nix to go out there and beat them by throwing the ball deeper down the field. And you guessed it, just like we talked about with our guy Dylan Gabriel, when they asked the question of, how good are you at throwing that football? The response was, not very. Right now, Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel obviously are guys who can still greatly improve as time goes on. Only time will tell if that does happen. Like I said, the Jets were down 13-11 with 2 minutes to go, and then Justin Fields got sacked for the 9th time in this game because he once again held onto the ball for 5 seconds in the pocket. And you know, you'd like to imagine that people learn their lesson as time goes on, but maybe it's just me. It's good to know that I'm not alone in my stupidity in certain things. But overall, bad day for the Broncos, right? Defense does a great job. They hold a bad football team to 11 points. But for the most part, everything else, and by the way, 9 sacks is amazing, right? 9 sacks is something that most teams would kill for in a singular game. A lot of that was Justin Fields. A lot of that was also the Broncos' coverage. So the defenses showed up in the international games, but the offense decided not to. So, which is unfortunate because it seems to consistently keep happening with the NFL. There's something about those long road trips. It's almost like people need time to acclimate and stuff like that. Whatever. But yeah, that's what happened in that game, and that's why that score is shocking. It looks like it is from the year 1920. Speaking of another 1920 score, the Seattle Seahawks played the Jacksonville Jaguars. Neither of those teams existed until like the 70s, right? Like the Jaguar didn't exist until like the 80s or something like that, whatever. The Seahawks played the Jacksonville Jaguars in one of the longest, and I think the longest road trip actually happened this Saturday as well. This is the second longest road trip that you can take in the NFL. The Chargers played the Dolphins, which I think is logistically the longest road trip in the NFL. Why does that matter? It doesn't. It is kind of insane. I didn't know planes could stay in the air that long, but apparently they can. A very deceptive score between two good defenses. Let's see, we got a chat in here. Only once has a QB taken 9 sacks in a game and won. Joe Burrow versus the Titans. Guys, and I actually did. Anyway, does anybody remember why Joe Burrow won that? Because we learned the important lesson, kids, and listen to me closely when I say this. We learned the important lesson of 9 sacks is 9 sacks. 4 interceptions, though, is 4 possessions your team doesn't get. There's a difference because I think Ryan Tannehill threw like 4 or 5 interceptions in that game or something, and that's pretty much how it happened. So, prolific type shit. At least Justin Fields still had a chance at the end of his game. Justin Fields better than Ryan Tannehill. Write that one down. I'm confident in saying that, even though, you know what? No, I'm confident in saying that. Remember that one? Remember like 2 seasons ago when Ryan Tannehill got cut from the Titans? We all thought he was going to be like the go-to backup QB for everybody when their guy got hurt, and it turned out that we haven't seen him since. Anyway, final score in this one, 20-12. If you guys don't know, I'm a Seahawks and a Texans fan. A very deceptive score between two good teams in the NFL. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think the Jaguars are actually that good. I think their defense is really good. And it makes up for the fact their offense kind of sucks sometimes. But very deceptive score between two good teams. The Seahawks are really good, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are good. See, 2 good teams. Want to know how desperate the Jaguars were throughout the course of this game? Trevor Lawrence tied his pass attempts for this season with 42. And if you know anything about how the Jacksonville Jaguars pass the ball up and down the field, you know that you want to reduce the amount of times that Trevor Lawrence has to decide where a ball is going to go further than 10 yards away from the line of scrimmage as much as possible. So for you to have to throw 42 passes in a singular game is brutal. Also, like I said, second longest road trip in the NFL. Anyway, the Jaguars looked good on their third drive of the game after the Seahawks D-line crushed them for the first 2, because I think the first play of this game was actually Leonard Williams sacking Trevor Lawrence. By the way, we'll talk about sacks a little bit later on in the exact way you think, not the other way. But anyway, the Seahawks D-line kind of fucked them up, and that's kind of the resounding theme of this entire game, and we'll talk about why. Trevor Lawrence flashed a little bit again in this one. So on this third drive of the game in the first half of it, he had a pass for 19, 14, and then a touchdown pass for 21 yards. Yes, there was a lot of yak on the last pass that ended up being a 21-yard reception, but he did find somebody who was wide open without a defender around him, and he looked not bad. You know, a lot of times this season, Trevor Lawrence is everybody else on the field has looked good, and Trevor Lawrence has looked like he does not need to be on the field with those people who are good at their job because he has struggled a lot. The Seahawks are forced to settle for a field goal after one of their drives stalls out inside of the Jags red zone. And when I say inside the red zone, they got to the Jacksonville Jaguars 6-yard line and kicked the field goal. Tough. Saddest field goal, but don't worry, it all pans out in the end. Anyway, this game, one of the big themes is the Seahawks are better than the Jaguars. We already knew that, right? Going into it. The other big thing is Jackson Smith-Njigba may be the number one wide receiver in the NFL. He had 118 yards at halftime of this game. And if you recall, the big thing about the Jacksonville Jaguars is they forced like 3 turnovers in their first 4 games of the season. They did not do that versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and they still won despite having like a very small semblance of offense. In that one, they still were able to win. And then in this game, they forced 0 turnovers, if I recall correctly, and lost. So kind of no Devin Lloyd highlights this week, despite the fact that Devin Lloyd has already had a career year within the spans of like the first 5 weeks of the season. He's got 4 interceptions, and one of them is a pick 6. So he's doing all right. The Jags' distribution of the ball is still one of the things that I enjoy a ton when I watch them play football. They had 10 different people touch the ball like on offense, which is really good because it's like every wide receiver and every running back that they have on the roster touch the ball at some point, whether it be for one time or not. But there was a lot of attempts to get the ball to different people. Like I said, I think that's important, especially because it reduces the amount of pressure that's on Trevor Lawrence to go out there and make superhero plays, which is just not going to happen. By the way, there's a highlight, and I'm sure it's out there in the world. You can type in Travis Hunter ankle breaker. He crosses the shit out of Nick Emanwari at one point down the left-hand sideline, and it just is it's astounding because it seems like every week he's getting better at playing wide receiver in the NFL while also playing DB because he has a crazy situation. It's right here in my notes. Right before halftime, the Seahawks are on the final drive to try and get like a field goal out of this one. So on back-to-back plays, the drive before this when they were on offense, he gets the ankle breaker, and then the drive after this one, he is driving in, or on defense, he is actually like crashing to the ball, and in his tackle, his helmet hits the ball so hard that it flies 10 yards back towards the line of scrimmage and almost gets intercepted by one of his D linemen. That's how hard he hit it. It's pretty crazy. It's 13-6 at halftime of this game, which is good for the Jags to be that close to the Seahawks, a team that is going to make it to the playoffs, whether it be via the wild card or by winning the NFC West, which is quickly becoming like the most difficult division in all of football, which is bad for me. By the way, since we're talking about halftime, the audio cut out at one point during this game, and then for some reason, whoever was mixing all the audio for the game itself, the crowd noise was way subdued in this one. Like the Jacksonville Jaguars fans were there. You can see it on film that they're in the stadium watching the game. And then all of a sudden, when something big happens, it sounds like they're in a stadium that's 10 miles away from the stadium that they're playing in. It was kind of weird. There was maybe some subtle shade from one of the broadcasters about how janky the Jacksonville Jaguar stadium is, because right after they came back from the microphones cutting out, they did mention that the Jags are getting a new stadium in like 7 years. And I feel like that... Or like they're getting a new stadium in like 4-something years or whatever. And I think maybe that was him being like, hey, guess what? The reason you didn't hear us there is because these fucking plugs have like termites in them or something like that. Anyway, back to football. Cooper Kupp is alive. He has a proof of life touchdown at one point during this game. The Seahawks had a 65-yard drive where Cooper Kupp got 40 of the yards, which is pretty cool, including the touchdown at the end. Like I said, proof of life touchdown. All the crazy stuff happened, and I kind of, like I said, I buried the lead on this one, and it was really important. I told you to remember sacks. The Seahawks killed the Jaguars up front. They actually got 7 sacks throughout the course of this game. They had 4 They had 4 in the second half, and 3 of those 4 were on third down, including the game-winning sack. So they were just out of control, right? Like Leonard Williams had like back-to-back sacks at one point during one of these drives. And like I said, this was deceptive. The Jags scored in the first quarter, and then they did not score again in this game until the fourth quarter. They missed a PAT and got stuffed on the 2-point conversion attempt, and that made the score 20-12 in this one. So it made it look like it was close, but it actually, at no point was it actually. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense is just that good. As you can imagine, there are not 4 more quarters in football for them to figure out another way to score, because that's what they would have needed versus the Seahawks. The Jags nearly had a Brian Thomas Jr. touchdown, which is kind of weird. They threw Trevor Lawrence threw the ball. It was actually short of where it was supposed to go. It was initially intercepted, and then the DB bobbled it up into the air, and Brian Thomas Jr. caught it and ran it into the end zone. But some Travis Hunter, who was on offense in this situation, was offside. It was weird. That was really strange. Anyway, another terrible offensive performance from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they did not have special teams or the defense to bail them out this week. So, I don't like using the F word, but the Jags are on fraud alert. They got a lot of wins, but we all see how they get those wins. They're completely unrealistic. Moving on to the next category. I don't even know what the timer is so far, but we're moving on to category number 2. That's the Heartbreakers category. These are the games that are pretty messed up for different reasons, and we're going to talk about why. So, off the top, Heartbreakers, Chargers, Dolphins. If you don't know everything that's going on with the Dolphins, please allow me to enlighten you. The Dolphins, they're losing like every game. Like they are 1-5 on the season. So they have like multiple games like this where they lose by like a touchdown or lose by field goal because of some crazy shit that happens towards the end of the game, and it kind of goes a little wonky for them. But take this one from the top. This is a heartbreaker because this could be the game that breaks the back of the Dolphins. We will find out. The second offensive play of this game is Tua throwing a dime over the middle of the field, what I assume is a glance route to Jalen Waddle. He bobbles it as he's trying to catch it, and it's intercepted by Tony Jefferson. Tony Jefferson, year 14 for the Chargers. And that's the third play of this game for the Dolphins. So that's pretty tough. Don't worry. The Chargers won it in on the party. They had a tight end fumble, which, by the way, I think I say it all the time, every time it happens. But if you are a pass catcher, it is nearly impossible for you to fumble the ball. So when you do it, it is one of the more heinous crimes in all of football. And that's what happened here. Heinous football crime. A tight end fumbled the ball, and the Dolphins recovered it, which is pretty good for the Dolphins because, the longer you make them play defense, usually the worse they get, especially when it comes to defending the run. Speaking of the run, the Dolphins, using their big brains, Mike McDaniels using his big brain out there, his big brain and his shiny glasses, he decided, hey, another week of me running Devon Achane into the ground until somebody figures out how to stop him. And that actually happens. No, they actually don't stop him. 49-yard touchdown run. The Chargers were so misaligned on one of these plays, on this play in particular, that a safety tried to rotate over and tackle Devon Achane, and all he got was a pulling guard to the face, and then nobody else was even in the frame when Devon crossed the goal line. And my guy Devon having another crazy year. One of the best running backs in the league, especially when it comes to like catching and passing the ball and stuff like that. So if he ever makes it to free agency, it's going to be crazy because I feel like he could be the top of a lot of Super Bowl caliber teams list in terms of like free agents they want on their team. But moving on, the Chargers at no point during this game looked smooth. The first half mainly because the Dolphins they were actually able to generate pressure, which has been kind of picking up as the season has gone along. Like Adrian Phillips has done a little bit better of a job of generating pressure. Because remember, it's supposed to be like Bradley Chubb on one side, Adrian Phillips on the other, and they meet in the middle all the time, all this kind of stuff like that. That actually kind of is what happened in this game a little bit. But the final drive of the Dolphins get the final drive of the first, and it's 10-9. Jalen Waddle bobbles another huge Tua throw, but this time, instead of getting it intercepted, it actually flies up into the air and somehow lands in his lap as he's sliding out of bounds. So it's kind of crazy. Check that highlight out. The Dolphins get a field goal off of that drive. naturally. 13-9. The second half had the tables turn pretty quickly. You tell me if this is bad, because guess what? It's very reminiscent of other things that we've seen the Dolphins do all season. The Chargers scored 2 touchdowns in 4 minutes. They scored on the opening drive of the second half, and then they get to the Dolphins' offensive drive, and you guessed it, Tua throws a ball slightly inaccurately over the middle. It goes behind Devon Achane, and it gets picked off by the defender, the DB that's in trail position behind him. And the Chargers score 4 plays later, and it went from 13-9 with the Dolphins leading to 23-9 with the Chargers ahead. Bad time. Guys, it's the middle of the game, and when I say it's the middle of the game, it's the third quarter usually, and it's usually the third quarter, the entirety of the third quarter, and the top of the fourth. You guys know what the deal is. The Dolphins have their union-mandated break where their offense just takes off. Their offense goes to lunch, and they got busy things to do. They go sit at the beach and look at the sun. They may look like they're on the field throwing the ball around, but what's really happening is they're taking their break, and that happens. That is why your team is one. That's why their team is 1-5, and it is a thing that has happened every single game they have played this season, which is a little disappointing considering how talented they are. But yeah. It's the third quarter. They took that off. They decided they're going to take that one off. Their union-mandated lunch break, if you will. The following drive after they're down 23-13 now. Tui Talopu sacks Tua to end that drive. Surprise, surprise. Bad things starting to pile up. Also want to point out Tui Talopu, who is swaggy out there. He's got 5 sacks. 6 games this season. It's pretty good, especially considering, everybody was worried about what was going to happen after Joey Bosa left the Chargers and stuff like that. Now he's with the Bills. And now with Khalil Mack hurt, somebody's got to step up, and it looks like it's Tui Talopu. He's doing this thing that he was drafted for. The Dolphins have their best drive of the game at the top of the fourth quarter, so they cut the lunch break a little bit short, which is pretty impressive. Overall, Tua in this game, and I'll say this much, he had way more good plays than he did bad. And that, it feels like he's getting better as the season goes along, which he shouldn't be doing that because he's like a veteran quarterback in the NFL. It shouldn't be like he's getting better as the season goes along. He's playing against opponents, and sometimes he looks bad, sometimes he looks good. The Dolphins did a great job of being dedicated to the run all game throughout the course of this one. And I'll say this much, the Chargers had Vidal out there. This is his first game at the starting running back position for the Chargers, and I think he did a really good job. But yeah, it paid off for him in the end because Devon Achane, once again, one of the best running backs in the league, he ends up getting them another touchdown, this time as a receiver, not running the ball. But it cuts the lead from to 26-20 in this one. The Dolphins follow up this one with another back-breaking drive, 13 plays, 82 yards, and they get a 1-point lead by throwing the ball to Darren Waller. And the reason I haven't mentioned Darren Waller's name up until this point is because in this game he had 2 catches for 12 yards and 1 touchdown. There when you need him. There when you call upon him. They just didn't call upon him for some reason. The biggest guy on the field playing offense, and they were like, you know what? No, we don't need him. Everything about this game is the Dolphins' redemption. They start running the ball a lot more. Mike McDaniels is a run coordinator guy before he got his head coaching job. The defense plays pretty well in terms of like bottling up the run offense of the other team. The pass rush starts getting there mainly because of the Chargers' injuries, but also they've been getting better as time goes on. And they're playing against a team that is led by one of the best QBs in the league. It's too bad. The Dolphins' first play on the final drive of this game is a sack. And they get the Chargers and they make them lose 5 yards. They're looking good, right? That they just scored the touchdown. They're up 20. They're up by 1 point. They're up by 1 point. The Chargers have one more drive. They're trying to get a field goal to win this whole thing. They get a sack on the first play, get 5 yards, and then they also have the time tick off, right? Pressure's on the Chargers to go out here and do the thing. They scored 2 touchdowns in 4 minutes. 2 touchdowns in 4 minutes. And everything since then, the Dolphins have been killing it, right? Now, reality happens. The next play, they snap the ball. Justin Herbert drops back. 3 defensive linemen from the Dolphins get nearly is the key word here. Even one of them grabs. Justin Herbert grabs is very different than sacks. Justin Herbert fights off the sacks, runs up the field, throws the ball to Ladd McConkey, and then he crosses up Dante Trader Jr. and then proceeds to run for a 49-yard reception that, you guessed it, sets up a game-winning kick from Cameron Dicker, the kicker. And the Dolphins are 1-5. That's heartbreaking. That's a tough way to go out. I don't even know if people are going to even show up to any more Dolphins games, but I'll say this much. They're a really talented team that is just not putting it together. After this game was over with, there was some press conference stuff that Tua came out and said that dudes are like skipping the players-only meetings and stuff like that. And then Mike McDaniel said, yeah, dudes should be focused on like trying to get better and all this kind of stuff. There was also some conversation later on after the fact about how Mike McDaniels doesn't agree with Tua calling people out in public, which I think everybody can safely say the guy who's trying to snitch on people to the public is not well liked. I hated it when Ben Roethlisberger would go on his local radio show and he would use it as a way to like talk about how the wide receivers sucked ass on the Steelers, and it was accepted because Ben Roethlisberger obviously meant a lot to the Steelers, but at the same time, I thought it was insane. I thought it was insane for you to instead of saying it to, you're a grown man, say it to another grown man's face. Maybe he did say it beforehand, but it didn't ever seem like he did. But for Tua to say that stuff into the microphone, obviously he's not going to go over well with a lot of people because from what we understand, he's not necessarily the most popular guy. I will say the least popular guy on the Dolphins roster, from what I understood, was Tyreek Hill. But yeah, no, it's not going well for the Dolphins, and it sucks because it feels like, everybody's talking about like Tua's not the guy that Mike McDaniel picked, but he was still able to get it. He was still able to get it to work for a little bit, but hasn't been able to recapture that magic since his like second year as the head coach. But the countdown begins. Really wonder why they haven't done it yet. But a lot of people speculate they're going to do it right before the bye week, all that kind of stuff like that. The final play of this drive, there's like 20 seconds left on the clock, and it's an interception. So when you go look at the stat sheet, it shows Tua threw 3 interceptions in a 4-point loss. And that's just not accurate, like in terms of like the reality of the situation. The last interception was on a drive with like 5 or 6 seconds left on the clock, and it was either going to be caught and they were going to, toss it around lateral and somebody was going to get called for a fumble, or something amazing was going to happen and they were going to win the game. But Derwin James gets like basically a free interception. It doesn't actually matter in the long run. The interceptions that did matter, one was off of a bobbled catch and is the epitome of why I think that wide receivers should also take credit for interceptions sometimes on their stats. But whatever. And the other one, it was an inaccurate pass. He threw it behind Devon Achane. He underestimated how fast he was, which happens a lot when it comes to Devon. Moving on, heartbreaker games. This one is brutal up front. This is Thursday Night Football. By the way, Thursday Night Football has been pretty fire this season so far, and I think we should all be thankful for it because if you're a football fan, if you're new to the game, let me give you the lowdown. Thursday Night Football has long historically been a type of game that brings out the absolute worst in the NFL because it is unnecessary. Nobody asks for more Thursday Night Football. Nobody ever does, but the NFL continues to provide it against our wishes. I will say it is very funny because Thursday Night Football is definitely a tool used to fit the collective bargaining agreement that requires that every team have a certain amount of primetime games. So it's where they put the shitty teams to play in the league. Hold on a second here. That was Dr. Pepper Blackberry Zero. Type in promo code Ashton for 0% off. Anyway, but yeah, Thursday Night Football kind of lit, especially for the meaning of it when it was all said and done. We've seen the ups and the downs. We saw his debut, and we're talking about Jackson Dart at quarterback and how he was able to put up a real legitimate fight and go out there and be pretty competitive. We saw him get that clutch win versus the Chargers. We saw him go out there and play like absolute shit versus the Saints, and it was a collective absolute shit, right? The overall in their game versus the Saints, they had 5 turnovers, and a good chunk of them were fumbles. But nonetheless, we've seen the ups and the downs, and it feels like the the Giants are on the way up and the Eagles are on the way down, and the Eagles are reigning Super Bowl champions. Crazy to think about it, but that's what Thursday Night Football looked like. We're getting to that point in the show where I gotta hydrate. Anyway, the reigning Super Bowl champions have they've been on a slow decline throughout the course of this season, and I think a lot of people who are fans of the Eagles, this looks a lot like the Eagles team from 2 years ago, where it's the same crew from the year before. They are going out there and they're running similar plays. They're kind of getting similar results against bad teams, so they're going to beat a bunch of bad teams. They are not throwing the ball, not distributing the ball very well. And they're going to end up the season with like 10 wins, get into the playoffs. And they may not win the NFC East when it's all said and done. But who knows, because the NFC East is really weird right now overall. Because honestly, despite what happened versus the Panthers, the Cowboys are still technically in it for the NFC East, in my opinion. But it's only week 6. They could run away with the division, or it could do that thing that it does every like 7 out of every 10 years. And it comes down to the Eagles playing the Cowboys in the final game of the season, which I don't think they play each other in the final game of the season this year. But it felt like in my childhood that happened every fucking year. Yeah, so third week in a row, an underdog is won on Thursday, which is really funny because in one of the... So you go back and you look at the 49ers. 49ers were heavily injured. The Rams are the team that has a bunch of these clutch wins throughout the course of the season, and the 49ers have Mac Jones as the starting quarterback versus Matthew Stafford, and half their wide receivers are... their legs don't work. Right? They didn't have Ricky Parasol. They didn't have Juwan Jennings, I don't think, on Thursday Night Football last week. And they lost even more people after the game was over. We'll talk about what happened to the 49ers later on, too. But, yeah, Thursday Night Football has been kind of crazy this year. And it's not just, like, bad upsets. It's legitimately fun to watch kind of upsets when it was all said and done. This game was a real heartbreaker because it really felt like... Look. They came out there. They clearly had a plan to throw the ball down the field a lot more than they have in the last couple of weeks because they've been struggling to get Saquon going. And I will say this, the opening plays of this game are Saquon having some of the best runs he's had all season. And then they immediately go to, we came out here to get Jalen Hurts to throw the ball to stop people from talking about how he doesn't throw the ball to A.J. Brown. And then he proceeded to not throw the ball to A.J. Brown vast majority of the game. Dallas Goedert, on the other hand, he got a lot of catches. The Eagles offense really had, obviously Landon Dickerson has been in and out of the lineup pretty much every game he started this season. He basically can't make it to halftime, if I'm not mistaken. I think he made it to halftime. I think he played the entirety of the first 2 games of the season, but when they played against the Buccaneers, he played in the first quarter and they got into the red zone and he got hurt, and he's been in and out of the lineup. He's very much like Lane Johnson, who's also hurt, where they just keep playing themselves until they end up on season-ending IR, and it essentially is going to fuck the Eagles because they already are struggling to pass the ball now, and they have really good offensive linemen. Can't imagine what it's going to be like when they have the backups to the backups in there. But yeah, man, it's pretty wild overall so far what we've seen. But the Giants game, they came out here, they had a plan, and their plan worked, which is weird because the Eagles have one of the better defenses in the NFL. This is hands down the worst performance they've put out this entire week. Very similar to what we saw last Monday Night Football with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The defense had their worst performance towards the end of the season, or they had their worst performance that they've put out there in like 2.5 years, essentially. They have not looked that bad. The Chiefs defense has not looked as bad as they did on Monday Night Football since the Super Bowl. And the Eagles can say the same thing. They were amazing during the Super Bowl, and they've been pretty astounding throughout the course of this season so far, even with all the rotations like Reed Blankenship, and then, of course, your guy getting moved to safety, which is the saddest of the saddest subtle stories that nobody's talking about. Anyway, the Giants kind of tear them apart, man. It was a lot to do with Jackson Dart being able to escape the pressure, whether it was the 4-man pressure or the 5-man pressure, in some cases full-on cover 0, he was still finding ways to get the ball up and down the field. Jackson Dart has clearly taking a liking to Warndale Robinson, which is really good to have a guy that you can depend upon for sure. And I think he was also throwing the ball at Daniel Bellinger a little bit, but now it just looks like it's Warndale Robinson wherever he is on the field is where the ball is going if he doesn't know where the ball is going to go. So, Cam Scatterboo doing the thing. All the memes have come out. It's pretty funny. I do feel like some of it's a little overhyped because of the thing. But yeah, they're having a good time. People are really enjoying watching the Giants play football. Their defense held up really well in this one, but I will say that playing against the Eagles and stopping them on defense isn't much of an achievement the last couple of weeks. But overall, we saw Saquon actually kind of get back on the horse a little bit throughout the course of this game, but when it came to passing the ball, there was just no consistency. A lot of it was trying to throw the ball on the edges, overthrowing a lot of people, and then almost nothing was over the middle unless it was to Dallas Goedert, which is tough because, the defenses have to have something. Defenses have to believe that the ball can go anywhere on the field, and that is one thing that they did not believe when they were playing against the Eagles. The other thing, I don't know if you guys know this or not, the Eagles have a really good defensive line. And this is the first game that I've watched the Giants play, and they look like the defensive line that we were all told that they were going to look like and how crazy they were going to go off it and be, Superman, super stud type stuff in this one. And in particular, it was Brian Burns, which is not surprising at all. Don't forget, the Panthers essentially gave Brian Burns away for nothing. Don't ever forget that, especially because it looks like he's in a much better place now, even though both of the teams are kind of winning. But we'll see. We'll talk about it. It's a long, long season, and it looks like the New York Giants got a lot more football to play than the Panthers will maybe this season. So we'll see. I'm not saying that they're a playoff contender or anything like that, but to sit here and ignore what they've been able to do the last couple of weeks with just the simple change at quarterback and running back and how that's even helped the defense would be a lie. Jackson Dart's mobility alone is something that has helped the offense be able to go out there and keep drives alive at the very least, which is important for giving the defense a chance to be able to actually rest. By the way, Lil Jordan Humphrey is still out there doing the thing. Shout out Lil Jordan Humphrey. He had a touchdown catch in this one. And, Jackson Dart had his rushing touchdown. I think he's got 3 weeks in a row. Is every game he started, he's got a rushing touchdown, I believe it is, off the top of my head. But, yeah. A.J. Brown's probably pretty jealous of Wan'Dale Robinson, which is kind of weird to say out loud. And I think that's the truth. But the Giants essentially were able to play offense and defense consistently for all 4 quarters. And if you've been watching the Eagles, they only play offense and defense. Well, they play defense all 4 quarters. They only play offense for 2, though. Very similar to the Dolphins, except you don't know when their lunch break is going to happen. That's the problem. Remember that one game where they had all those points in the first half and then they did 0 diddly squat in the second? Like I said, Jackson Dart burned one of the best defenses in the NFL multiple times throughout the course of this game, and that's what really helped them kind of crack the Eagles wide open because they were able to continue to score and continue to be successful throughout the course of this game, and that's what kind of pulled them apart there. Crazy thing that came out of this game, Jackson Dart gets hit kind of weird on the way down to the ground. He clearly gets affected, and he ends up in the blue concussion tent, and Brian Daboll almost strangles the independent neurologist for the Giants as they're examining Jackson Dart, and then Cam Scatterboo, a man who's probably quite familiar with concussion symptoms himself, decides that Jackson's all right, and he goes back out there. Moving on, let's talk about games that were a lot more fun and they were heartbreakers for different reasons. It looks like the fairy dust on the 49ers may have dried up. So, final score, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 30, San Francisco 49ers 19. This is a little deceptive. Don't fall for it. We'll talk about what happened throughout the course of this game. But yes, the injuries continue to pile up in this season for the 49ers, and they just took a massive one. Fred from Mexico, Fred Warner, best linebacker in the NFL, and that's coming from a guy who's a big fan of Bobby Wagner. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Fred Warner is a fucking beast. It's him and Nick Bolton, in my opinion, but Fred Warner for sure. Dislocated ankle out for the season. This is crazy. So, but yeah, and you could tell. Like when it happened, It was so demoralizing. Don't forget, Mac Jones is actually still hurt too. He has a knee brace on, but you can't tell because of his leggings and stuff like that. But it's looking grim for the 49ers, despite the fact that they're winning all these fucking games. This game should have been significantly worse than it actually was. The Bucs defensive line was cooking all games. They had 3 sacks. The Bucs had 3 sacks in the first quarter. Not the first half, the first quarter. 2 of those were on third down, so they killed those drives with a sack. The Bucs had 6 sacks in total, along with 2 interceptions, and we'll talk about how this game is a little deceptive on the part of like how badly the 49ers kind of fell apart. Even with all those negatives that you can talk about from the offensive standpoint, they were still finding a way to get up and down the field. It was 20-16 at halftime of this game. Mac Jones found one of his oldest and nearest and dearest friends, and Kendrick Bourne, who I used to watch his YouTube channel all the time, but he didn't post anymore. That's the one thing. Look, if you're a young NFL prospect out here, and this goes to even the one that I know personally, I'm not going to say his name. If you're a young NFL prospect, don't tempt me with starting a YouTube channel and only do the part leading up to the NFL draft. I need to see everything, and I understand you can only film certain things, but when you're at home doing your free time stuff and doing whatever you want to, you should be making YouTube content for me, because I want to see you do cool stuff, young person. But yeah, that typically is what happened. There's so many NFL prospects that are like, well, I'm not getting the media coverage that I want for my NFL journey, so I'm just going to make it into a YouTube video. And then after I get drafted, I'm going to keep making YouTube videos. And then they never make another video, which happens a lot as a person who, I can't tell you how many NFL players that I followed from their rookie season NFL Path to the Draft vlog. And it just never happened. After that, the path to the draft ended. The path got to the draft and then it ended. That's what happened. But yeah, this is the loss of Fred was pretty noticeable up front. The Buccaneers, despite having to be, they had Emeka Egbuka to start this game, but by the time the first half was over with, he was out as well. So they were on their 4th, 5th, and 6th string wide receivers, which, by the way, we're going to talk about one of them, and y'all got to stop disrespecting him. Like I said, you could tell up the middle there was way more push in terms of like the run, lanes for the Buccaneers, and then even at one point, one of the touchdowns scored by Sean Tucker, who is a true run in between the tackles type running back, and it looks like he's also taking carries away from Rachaad White. Who would have thought? Who, by the way, had a pretty good run up the middle at one point during this game. But nonetheless, Sean Tucker has a rushing touchdown where he bounces the ball to the outside, and there's not a soul to be found. There's a safety running from the opposite side of the field trying to run Sean Tucker down before he gets into the end zone, and it does not happen. So yeah, that's kind of how the first half goes. It's a little erratic. Despite all that, the 49ers still, in my opinion, looked really fucking good in this game, even though the score doesn't kind of tell the whole picture. The 49ers opening drive gets them a field goal and makes it 20-19, and yes, you guessed it, that is the last time the 49ers will score in this game. The Bucs opening drives gives us one of the best plays of the entire weekend. They get to 3rd and 14, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback and potential MVP of the NFL this season ducks 2 defensive linemen, runs up the field, pump fakes twice, even though he's already passed the line of scrimmage. He gets hit by a safety, and then he dives forward for 3 more yards to get a first down to convert a 3rd and 14 to keep a drive alive, which, by the way, I think should tell you a lot about how hard the 49ers defense was playing despite all the injuries. It was pretty impressive. 2 plays later, Tez Johnson makes an insane full-on layout fingertip grab into the end zone, then does a backflip, and the Buccaneers fans start chanting MVP. Later on, we come to find out that Tez Johnson thought they were talking about him and not his quarterback that is having a prolific season. Let's be real. When this is all said and done, Baker could be the greatest quarterback in the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they had Tom Brady at one point. I don't know. We'll see. Water break. I'd rather just drink the water instead of coughing into the microphone, especially considering I am having some allergy stuff going on. But yeah, that was crazy. By the way, to kind of cap this whole thing off, like I said before, the 49ers don't score again in this game. Jamel Dean caught it again, guys. If you didn't hear about the joke that happened earlier this season, Jamel Dean has a really nasty habit of not catching interceptions, and so when he catches one, it is nay short of a local holiday for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans. They all tweet about it when it happens, and then the worst part was they released the mic'd up segment where they mic'd up Baker Mayfield, and when he caught the interception, everybody on the sideline was like, "You caught it, JaVale! You caught it, JaVale!" Which is so messed up. But he did catch it again in this game. He did catch another one in this game. Mac Jones' second pick comes with less than 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And for a little while, they were moving the ball up and down the field, but because of, the limitations of some of the wide receivers that were out there, it was basically like Kendrick Bourne. It was the only guy that they were throwing the ball to. And he had to, get deeper down the field. He wasn't getting any short yardage stuff, but he had one hell of a day. And get signed to a regular contract kind of day, because I think he got signed to a short notice one, which means that there's a chance that when either one of Jerron or Ricky Parasol comes back, or even Brandon Ayuk, who's allegedly coming back at some point during this season, he comes back and somebody's got to go. We'll see who it is, though. The Bucs finish. The Bucs use the interception to finish off the 49ers. They kill the rest of the clock, and Baker Mayfield gets his first win against the 49ers in his 6 times that he has played them. So he's 1-5 in one way this season, and it is against the 49ers. Every other way that they're keeping track of records, he is damn near undefeated. So, having the best season of his entire career. Remember that one time the Browns thought they were too good for Baker Mayfield? It always makes me laugh because it feels like it was such a long time ago, but it was really like 4 years ago. It was like 4 years ago. Remember that? Where they were like, we're too good for Baker Mayfield. Give us the man who is a habitual assaulter. Anyway, weird shit. That wide receiver that I was saying that y'all got to chill on and actually show some respect to was Sterling Shepard. A lot of you guys are pretending like you don't know who Sterling Shepard is, and I find that crazy. You saw him when he played for the Lions and when he played for the Giants. He is a good wide receiver, and you guys got to stop talking about him like he's a nobody. All right? Anyway, moving on. I'm done. We're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, which is the last game in the Heartbreakers category. 30-17 was the final score in this one. The Lions in their first drive of this game with a little bit of controversy, even though it's not very controversial. They basically ran over the Chiefs for the first drive and the only drive where they would be able to do that throughout the course of this game, because I feel like that is the defining feature of this entire game. They get down to like the 4-yard line against the Kansas City Chiefs. They have Jared Goff in I formation. David Montgomery is the I back, right? Jared Goff rotates out to the left-hand side. He has a wide receiver throw a block on the defensive back. David Montgomery throws a terrible pass to Jared Goff. He catches it, even though it's like almost right into the grips of the DB that's being blocked. He reaches out forward, catches it, brings it back, and then scores in the end zone, making people think that Jared Goff had scored an anytime touchdown, which would have paid out a bunch of money to a bunch of people betting-wise. And then everybody forgot to mention that one really obscure rule that we have in the NFL, where if you line up in a T formation, which I formation is technically a variation of the T formation, that quarterback has to come to a complete stop for 1 second before the play starts, which makes sense because you don't want people being able, because imagine if Jared Goff had run like off the left tackle, right? And run in motion off the left tackle, and he didn't have to abide by the rules that all the other wide receivers do, which is where if you just keep running parallel to the line of scrimmage without turning towards the line of scrimmage, you can run as fast as you want, which makes a lot of sense because it could literally be one of those things like they throw the ball to David Montgomery, he keeps running, he's wide open, and all he has to do is like fall forward. It is weird that everybody else doesn't have to follow the 1 second rule anymore. In only certain situations the quarterback has to, but who gives a shit? That was not the backbreaker in this game. This game was a little deceptive as well, because in the fourth quarter, we'll talk about it when we get to the fourth quarter. Anyway, it was called a legal motion. They take the touchdown away. That they kick a field goal off of it, and the Chiefs go out there and they're cooking on offense. They are utilizing a series of sweeps, motions. They do a really good job of actually, and I didn't even realize this, their linemen set up in wider splits than most of the other linemen, offensive linemen do in the NFL, and it means that the D linemen have to line up even wider to be able to fill up the running lanes, which creates running lanes. The Chiefs had some of the best pass blocking that I've seen them have vast majority of the season, and I think part of that was because of how confused a lot of the defenses were. They were just running basic zone behind the four-man rush from the Lions, and a big issue was figuring out where the ball was. They were running wide receiver end arounds with Xavier Worthy. They were moving the ball pretty efficiently with the run game as well. They had a lot of short yardage stuff that was curl routes or crossing routes into the zone spaces behind defenders. And obviously, Patrick Mahomes is like the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. He's hitting Travis Kelce. He's hitting Worthy. He's hitting pretty much anybody else who's lined up, who's lining up in those spots, and doing a really good job of it. They tear them apart just with the motion in general. And if they can't find an opportunity for a pass, what was happening a lot was Patrick Mahomes was bailing early on the pocket a lot, and the Lions just couldn't get him down on the ground. There was one point where Aiden Hutchinson is able to force the ball out on a potential strip sack of Patrick Mahomes, and then eventually there's a penalty called, and it wipes that play away. But overall, this is the best that the Chiefs' offense has looked. It looks a lot more like it did 2 years ago than it did last season, where they really struggled to get a lot of yardage up the middle of the field, where they kind of ran way too many basic plays for having the kind of personnel that they have. They still hadn't unearthed like how to properly utilize Xavier Worthy, right? They hadn't figured out what Travis's new role was going to be in the offense. They just knew Travis can do the find the route that gets Patrick Mahomes to throwing the ball route. You know, that happens a bunch. But they were still having questions on the offensive line. Those questions have gone away. And then most importantly, in this game, the Chiefs defense is back to absolutely carrying the Kansas City Chiefs entire franchise on their back. There were, and I think this kind of like exemplifies everything that happened in this one. The Lions ran the ball 23 times. 2 of those runs were over 10 yards. 7 were over 5 yards or more. Everything else was it was 5 yards and under. A lot of it was 3 yards and under in negative gains and no gains. They took away the run game, and they forced Jared Goff to go out there and throw the ball deep down the field, and he couldn't. They were getting pressure with 4 people because, you know, despite everything that these psychopaths on the internet like to say, because they took one play where they thought Chris Jones wasn't hustling enough and used that to be like, he's lazy, he's not focused, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the pressure and the reason that the Chiefs won the game versus the Lions was Chris Jones. And I think it's kind of dumb that you take like a few instances where he gets a little risky and he jumps to the inside set of an offensive lineman, and it allows a running lane against Justin Herbert and everything like that wasn't there. And you take away all the other times where he's done the perfect play or the play that is above and beyond what needs to be done in that situation. But here we are. Crazy people on the internet who know nothing about football. I don't know anything about football, but I know that Chris Jones is really good at his job. Moving on, like I said, a lot of the times Patrick Mahomes was just untouchable versus the Lions defense, so it gave him all the time in the world. And as you guys know, in the NFL, everybody can't cover for 5 seconds or more, right? And especially when you're playing zone, and if you think about like they're running routes deeper down the field, as you get deeper down the field, more people have to defend you with their back to you. There's 4, typically if you get past like the first down marker, there's 4 people that you are behind. And that's 4 people who have to defend you by looking at the eyes of the quarterback, which is almost impossible from that distance, and to do it accurately enough to be able to intercept the ball. Anyway, that's what happened. The Lions got forced to use Jared Goff like he's a quarterback that can carry them to winning key and big games throughout the course of the season. He did not have access to 2 of his most reliable teammates in the pass game or in the run game, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And so you had to figure out how to get the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who barely touched the ball, and Jameson Williams, who had some moments where he looked amazing, including like a really cool hurdle play. But outside of like big plays down the field, the technical stuff with Jameson Williams just wasn't there in terms of like how to break down the Chiefs zone. They did a great job of snapping down on a lot of the underneath plays as well. And despite all that, the Lions were only down 20-17 going into the fourth quarter. Like 2 minutes into the fourth quarter, they had gotten a field goal and they were down 20-17. And they didn't even have to like really ditch their style of play, if you think about it that way. So it wasn't like they had to stop running the ball because the Chiefs were ahead by so much. It was literally they couldn't run the ball, and the Chiefs forced the Lions to play a different style of football that they're not comfortable with. The Chiefs defense does it again. Like I said, for the last 3 years, they're locking the fuck up, bro. They're locked in, and you're in prison, bro. That's pretty much how this game shook out. I thought it was a really great showing overall from the Chiefs. It's the best they've looked all season. And they've had a bunch of performances where they've progressively gotten better. And then the crazy part, the scary part is the big guy comes back soon. You know, the big guy. Rashid Rice comes back pretty soon for him. And if they figure out how to get him in the mix, the AFC's locked up again. Pretty much. Anyway, going to the oh my category. These are games that have interesting results, and how they got to those results is also interesting. The Patriots played the New Orleans Saints. There were 0 punts in the first half of this game. I really felt like I was kind of getting a little glimpse into the future contenders in the NFL. Obviously, the Patriots are 4-2 right now, so it's kind of wild that I'm saying that they're a future contender when they're clearly doing a really good job right now. They just came off beating the undefeated Buffalo Bills. But nonetheless, there are still some like really incomplete parts about the Patriots overall. They're still trying to get, Travion Henderson going as a running back. Ramondre Stevenson, by the way, 0 fumbles. 0 fumbles this game. Good job, Ramondre. Especially considering, like, if you just didn't fumble the ball, you'd be definitively the number 1 running back on the Patriots without question. And they wouldn't have had to do the whole, like, get the ball to Antonio Gibson. Oh, by the way, shout out to Antonio Gibson. He tore his ACL, man, so he's out for the season. That does suck. Because you never know when you're a running back and you're past, like, your rookie contract. You never know what play could be your last play, and I hope that's not the case for Antonio Gibson because I know he's been grinding for a long time in the NFL. Like I said, there were 3 punts in the first half of this game. Drake May had 3 touchdowns before halftime. Both of these guys were kind of slinging that thing, but Drake May was putting it out there. Kayshon Boutte, he was showing his ass. Yeah, I did it. Sorry, I had to. Kayshon Boutte was out there killing him. He had 2 touchdowns in the first half of this game. Demario Douglas, who apparently, I think I watched a video where he explained why they call him Pop Douglas, and I forgot because I watch so much stupid shit on the internet. But Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas, gets a massive touchdown in this one, a 53-yard touchdown, and that was on the first drive of this game, and it was basically because the Saints mixed up their safety coverage. And so it was my guy out there, Tanner, who got kind of crossed up a little bit, and he got beat on that play. But Kayshon Boutte had like a dime of a catch multiple times to get a touchdown from Drake May, who was out there. I mean, like I said, this guy looked extremely confident, which is the wild part about it. The Saints didn't look as clean, but were able to kind of go blow for blow with the Saints early on in this one, as you can see from like the final score, right? But they didn't look as clean in this one. They still figured out a way to get into the end zone. They've gotten Kendre Miller more and more carries every single week. Spencer Rattler looks more comfortable in the pocket. A lot of his escapes that he had versus the Patriots D-line, which we've already talked about. You know, our guy Milton Williams didn't get a sack this week. Don't worry. Just wait a week. Milton Williams will be sacking a quarterback again. That's how good he is. Spencer Rattler, dancing around in the pocket, did a really good job. Also, distributing the ball. Chris Olave got a lot of touches in this. So I think this is Chris Olave had like 70 yards. No, he had 98, right? No, he had 98 yards and a touchdown in this one. I think that was his best game this season so far. But I will say, everybody kind of got robbed. Rashid Rice, Juwan Johnson, Olave. They had Taysom Hill run a touchdown in for some reason. This is weird. Every other point outside of this touchdown from Taysom Hill was a field goal from Blake Grupe. I don't know why I said he had a touchdown. Oh, I was just upset that Taysom Hill got the only touchdown in this game for the Saints because I feel like They kind of keep trying to force him on us for some reason, even though they've proven time and time again they already have other people who are better at playing football than Taysom Hill. But I guess they pay him all that money, so they got to figure out how to use them, right? Like I said, Blake Grupe earned his spot. He's the kicker for the Saints that looks like a 12-year-old. No shade, he really does. Go look up a photo of him. You know what's really messed up? And since we're talking about like inside football stuff, they send Blake Grupe to go talk to like middle schoolers, like to like inspire middle schoolers to like stay in school and eat their vegetables and stuff like that. And they take photos, and I'm like, bro, that's mean. He looks the same height and exactly like them. He's been stopped by security before, and they've been like, hey man, no kids in the locker room kind of deal. And it's just like he plays on the team. Anyway, whatever. I'm not going to say the joke I was going to say about his wife. I'm sure she's a lovely lady, and I'm sure Blake is a really cool dude. He just looks like he's got Benjamin Button disease. So, he just looks super young. In my notes I say, want to know how this game was close? It's simple. The second half of this game, after giving up 22 points, because they did get a 2-point conversion because they missed one of the PATs, because their swaggy kicker, the guy who has the towel, the sleeve, and then his name is in an extra small font because it is longer on the back of his jersey, so it puts more attention on him as well. He also wears the jersey number 38. I hear his name all the time and I forget how to say it. Anyway, the swag kicker missed one of his PATs, and so they had to get a 2-point conversion, and they were up 22. Where is it? Yeah, they were up like 22-6 or something like that at halftime, and the Saints said no, thank you. They said we won't be allowing this to go on anymore. They killed the Patriots' run game, which forced Drake to keep the drives alive without having any run in the mix, right? Which is always difficult late in games where you're ahead by what you think is a lot of points, right? The first half, in terms of passes that were 10 yards or more, and I had to go back and calculate. I had to count this myself. He had 165 yards of passes that were just over 10 yards because he had a bunch of passes that were like way beyond 10 yards, right? He had like a 54-yard touchdown reception, right? And the Kayshon Boutte touchdowns were over 20 yards as well. So you had 8 passes that were 10 yards or more. In the second half, they had 4 for 10 yards or more, and it was only for a combined 61 yards in those 4 passes. So the Saints defense went from surrendering 22 points in the first half of this game to 3 points in the second. And the Patriots scored once in the second half. They gained a total of 86 total yards in the second half. They got shut down. They got locked up, and the only issue was that the Saints couldn't figure out how to score another touchdown. They'd scored one more touchdown, they would have beaten the Patriots and won this game. The defense did their thing in the second half, and it's just tough, you know what I mean? Because you talk about if they stop maybe one of those touchdowns, being able to go out there and win this game, but it didn't happen for them. The oh my part of this one was how good the Saints were able to play, but also on top of that, the Patriots looking pretty good because it's a continuation. There's a big letdown after you take out an undefeated Buffalo Bills team, big divisional rival. All the memes are going around and all this kind of stuff like that. You kind of feeling yourself a little bit. You go up against the Saints, a team you think is easy to beat, and because they only have one win, they're a 1-5 team. They're one of the better looking 1-5 teams, but nonetheless they're 1-5, and you go out there and you win it all, right? And you go out there and you win the game, the tough game with against a really good defense. You kind of grind it out with your young quarterback at the helm of the grinded out part in the back half of the game. So that's always pretty impressive. The other oh my game I had in here was the Falcons versus the Buffalo Bills. It could have been 28-7 at halftime of this game with how well the Falcons played. Bijan Robinson did a fantastic job of absolutely kicking the shit out of everybody who was on the field. Tyler Algier did a really good job. He had an opening touchdown where he ran through 2 defensive backs to be able to score a touchdown. But for the most part, they have figured out their offense. It is move Bijan Robinson around and give him the ball and see what mismatches he can get. And it works really, really well. And if that doesn't work, by the time the defense has figured out how to stop Bijan for a couple of plays, Drake London is wide open or Kyle Pitts is wide open. And they've it looks real limited in terms of what their offense is doing in the grand scheme of things, but it does work effectively against multiple teams. But the important part, the real star of the show in this one, for all 4 quarters, for the first time this season, the Atlanta Falcons played against a high-level, high-quality football team, high-end, elite-level team, and 2 weeks after losing 30-0, right? They hold the Buffalo Bills, led by the reigning NFL MVP, to 14 points because that's how good their pass rush was. Their pressure was consistent throughout all 4 quarters. They got a couple of sacks on Josh Allen. They did a fantastic job defensively on the back end of not allowing the short yardage stuff to get away with them. If you ran a curl route, that DB was on your back like white armor. You could feel the hot breath of the DBs if you ran a curl route. They were basically almost popping the ball out every time they tried to hit a wide receiver on a curl route. They thought it was PI with how good the DBs for the Falcons were covering. And it was pretty impressive. There was like 2 drives in the entirety of this game where the Buffalo Bills looked like the Buffalo Bills. Their offensive line don't know what the Falcons were doing up front to make a really high level offensive line look terrible, because they did it all game. I think some of that also had to do with the coverage that was deeper down the field. The Buffalo Bills also completely abandoned the run, which I think is always a massive mistake, especially considering when you cut off one of your best offensive weapons and you know the other team is focused in on short yardage passing plays. Running the ball is going to be the best remedy. Getting your offensive linemen away from having to do pass pro stuff so that they can go out there and just start hitting people is going to help as well too. And James Cook is a guy who is worth hanging your hat on to be able to go out there and win the game, and they just chose not to do it. Michael Penix Jr. did a great job of reading the Buffalo Bills defense. A lot of the times they shot pressure at him, he was able to actually beat it and burn him for yards. He was a little bit limited in who, like I said, he was limited in who he was throwing the ball to. It was Tyler Algier, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson. Pretty much everybody else was like not available. Kyle Pitts got a couple of plays thrown his way, but he had like a screen pass where he fell down before he got past the line of scrimmage. So, unicorn, everybody, the unicorn. But yeah, it looked close for a little while because at one point it was 21-14. But like I said, it could have been 28 to 7 at halftime. But with 5 seconds, they got an interception on a Buffalo Bills drive where they were trying to get a field goal before they went into halftime. They got an interception. They go back out there. They're at like the 50-yard line. They throw the ball. Anyway, we're back, allegedly. But yeah, they did a fantastic job throughout the course of this game. The Buffalo Bills were on their heels, vast majority of it. A lot of it had to do with the pressure up front from the Falcons. Like I've said, and I think you've heard other people say, the Falcons finally have a pass rush for the first time in like 20 years. Legitimately 20 years. The Packers played the Bengals. I put this one in the oh my category because it was a little bit of a precursor to what Joe Flacco was able to do on Thursday Night Football. He really struggled in the first half of this game. He should have struggled the entirety of this game because it is insane what he was asked to do. He was asked to show up to a football team where he knows some people in passing. And he was asked to start an NFL football game with an offense he has not run more than a week to go out there and win a game. Now, the first half of this game, he looked bad. He should have looked bad. Second half of this game, it felt like, and I think this is what happens when you get older. You get wiser somehow. You get smarter. Tell me if I'm crazy when I say that. You get a little bit smarter as you get older because you realize there are different, none of us are all one thing, right? And I think Joe Flacco in the second half of this game said he is not one person. He's not one type of quarterback, right? And that's what made a lot of people ask for a long time if Joe Flacco is elite, including myself. It's nights like this one and Thursday Night Football that makes you question, is Joe Flacco elite all these years later? Year 18, and I'm still asking the same question. Anyway, Joe Flacco very clearly went into the locker room and he told himself, I got to start slinging that thing. He went from where he was with the Browns, where so much of the offense was getting the ball underneath to all the playmakers and making them go out there and make the plays, to him being like, you know what? There are 2 elite wide receivers out here, if I just throw it in the general vicinity, I'm gonna let him go out there and ball. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it very much seemed like he had a lot of faith in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who he just met. And maybe, just maybe, they built up a bunch of faith throughout the course of this one. Because that second half, they played like they played in the second half of this game, they would have won this one. Because the Packers started off crazy slow coming out of the bye week, right? The run game is the only thing that was really consistent for them up front. The defense got better as the game went on, but the offense, in terms of passing the ball, they had a couple of really nice moments where they got the ball to Romeo Doubs and Marcus Golden. Everything else, it was Jordan Love running outside of the pocket trying to get yardage, right? He looked like Patrick Mahomes out there, which is not a bad thing to look like, but not a great way to win games consistently, especially when you're playing against a Cincinnati Bengals team who just got their new starting quarterback. 27-18 is the final score. The oh my part was for the Browns. For the Bengals, because they looked like they may have a little bit of life. The AFC North is an interesting place. We'll see. We'll talk about the other teams in the AFC North. You tell me what you think. Speaking of other teams in the AFC North, the Rams played the Ravens. Once again, really deceptive score. But I think the Ravens are back. I mean, were they ever gone? I think the Ravens are here. The ones that, like, they told us about. Like, the ones that we all thought were going to show up at the beginning of the season, that we've been waiting on to show up. I think they're here. Derrick Henry was back to cracking skulls. He had his best game since the fumble issue started. And a lot of it was due to the fact that he wasn't getting hit in the backfield, which is always nice. The Rams were the victims of one of the best strip sacks I've ever seen, which, by the way, that's our Who Player of the Week. Who? It's John Jenkins, Ravens defensive tackle, and you're going to listen to every single second of this because I spent like 2 hours researching stuff about John Jenkins because he is an interesting character. He's a black man from Connecticut, from the middle of nowhere, Connecticut, who went to JUCO at Mississippi Community College, and then after that was like the fourth best JUCO. He was a 4-star JUCO prospect, and he ended up going to Georgia, and we'll talk about why that's crazy a little bit later on. He's in season number 13 in the NFL, which, by the way, found out later on after watching another interview, he is the second oldest defensive player in the NFL right now. The other one, who is the oldest, is the unstoppable mite that is Calais Campbell. Kind of crazy. He was a third-round pick to the Saints in the year 2013, where many of us who are watching this podcast were either in college or in high school. John Jenkins was entering the workforce as an NFL defensive tackle. Like I said, he took the JUCO route. He went to a school called Francis T. Maloney High School. I wonder what Francis T. Maloney did to get a high school named after him. But anyway, after that, he's a 4-star JUCO prospect. He goes to Georgia. He gets drafted by the Saints. And I want to say, like, in terms of eating stuff, right? You go from Connecticut, because he's a D tackle. He's like 6'3", weighs 360 pounds, which means he and I are around the same weight while he is 3 inches taller than me. You go from Connecticut. Food scene doesn't seem like it's all that popping in Connecticut, but what do I know? Connecticut, Mississippi, Southern eating, right? They may be second to last in literacy rate, but they know how to cook some food up. Georgia, Athens, Georgia in particular, so good barbecue, good food in general, right? And then he goes to the Mecca of New Orleans. And then when he goes to New Orleans, he got money. That's nice. That's a good place to be. John Jenkins has been living a good life. You know what I mean? He's worked hard to live a good life. You also may remember John Jenkins from previous hits. The Ratbirds offense just doesn't function without Lamar. We're actually going to talk about that. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit. Whoever this Sergeant Major 420 is. We will talk about this in a second. Keep that in your head. But you may remember John Jenkins from previous hits as the heaviest person to run the longest touchdown back in the history of the NFL. He got a strip sack for the Raiders 2 years ago, and he ran it back for a touchdown. I watched an interview with him, which means I'm going to tell you everything that happened in it. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to tell you the one thing that was kind of cool about it. I watched an interview with him. It's called The Lounge by the Ravens media team. Two guys who The only guy I knew was Garrett Downing because he's like the guy for the Ravens. He's like the insider that every team has or whatever for the Ravens specifically. He is 6'3", 360 pounds, and he picked up cycling in the year 2020, and that's what he does for conditioning in the offseason. He says it's like good on the knees and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm going to take this guy's advice. If he says it's good on the knees, it's good on the knees. But, yeah, that's what he picked up in 2020, and that's what he does for conditioning in the offseason. So that's pretty good. If it's good enough for an NFL defensive tackle, it's good enough for you. He has 5.5 sacks over the course of his 13-year NFL career, which I can't imagine how frustrating that must be, because his fourth sack was literally jacking Matthew Stafford as he was on his way down to the ground as he was sacking him. So, like, he was sacking Matthew Stafford, and he jacks the ball from him. Just a perfect example of 13 years, 5.5 sacks, all the path that he's been on from Connecticut to Mississippi to Georgia to New Orleans, and then he's also gone to like 17 other NFL teams. Like he played for the Seattle Seahawks, the Chicago Bears, and a couple other places, the Miami Dolphins before, and the Raiders, like I mentioned before. So all those cities, plus now ending up with the Ravens. He's a starting defensive tackle due to injuries. Good, remember to stay on the grind, guys. Back to the game. John forces a turnover. The Rams offense loses Puka Nacua on the following offensive drive, because I don't need to explain to you that they scored 3 points. The Ravens scored one time in the entirety of this game. So every time they got the ball on offense, nothing happened. So he gets a high ankle sprain trying to high point a touchdown catch, which surprisingly, Marlon Humphrey was in the perfect position to intercept, which is shocking for some people who know things about Marlon Humphrey, who was an All-Pro last year, but for some reason has looked like the worst DB for the Ravens so far in terms of like all the really good defensive backs that they have on this team. But nonetheless, he was in perfect position. He actually had that ball in his hand. I don't know why he dropped it. I think he got kicked by Puka on the way down to the ground, and that's why he ended up dropping the interception. Anyway, they lose Puka. Blake Corum has another week where he looks pretty good at the running back position. They got to give him some more carries, work him in a little bit more, combined with some horrible special teams. And when I say horrible, I mean the Rams missed a field goal on their opening drive. A knuckleball kicked off of they kicked the knuckleball, or their kicker kicked the knuckleball in for a field goal at one point during this one. So like a ugly looking field goal. He in the comments, those bicycle tires got to be crying. I'm telling you right now, he got NFL money, and you'd be surprised, man. He got NFL money. He can get the nicest bike on the line. And one thing I know about cycling, because my dad is a cyclist, it is one of those sports where it is one of those competitive sports or non-competitive sports where dudes can pull up and they will have like a $10,000 bike to go on a ride with a bunch of dudes down like a dirt road, or not a dirt road, but like, you know, the country or whatever, and not be a pro cyclist, not be sponsored or anything. They just have a $10,000 bike because they want the best. You know what I mean? Like one of those situations, like people who spend money on golf, right? Like you're never going to spend a single day on the PGA Tour, but for some reason you have the exact same clubs as come on Ashton, show some sports knowledge. Will Zalatoris. I was just like, name any golfer for a second, and it took me a second. Sorry about that. But yeah, they missed a field goal, and then they get a terrible knuckleball kick that looked pretty ugly, but it does go in. And then they had a huge punt return that eventually the Rams defense bails them out of with an insane individual effort from Jared Verse. But prior to that, they get the ball down to like the Rams 30-yard line on this punt return. They hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, and he has he should have scored on this play, but he doesn't end up scoring. You know, it happens. It happens to all of us. It doesn't happen to all of us. It happens to Derrick Henry. He got like 25 yards carrying like two people and then fell down at like the 1 yard line. They tried to do the tush push twice. One time with Mark Andrews, the other time with Cooper Rush. It did not work. And then this is with Ronnie Stanley out of the game, by the way. He got hurt in the first quarter. Tell me a story you haven't heard a billion times before. Shout out to Ronnie Stanley. Hopefully he's healthy soon, man. But dude's always hurt because he's a tall person that is asked to do crazy things. Mark Andrews gets stuffed. They decide they're going to go with halfback off tackle left, right? They have a guard pulling from the left. They have a tight end that is not Mark Andrews. Number 84, I don't know who it was. It wasn't Isaiah Likely because he's not 84. They have him come off the edge. He's met by a very nasty Jared Verse. Jared Verse is getting pushed on by this tight end, this obligatory tight end from the Ravens, and the right guard, who I think is Noseboom for the Ravens, and he does not move. They're pushing him for like 2 seconds. Derrick Henry is running towards them, and they're like, and I think Derrick Henry realized they were not going to be moving him, and so he tried to cut back on him, and then he fell down, and Jared Verse touched him, and he was down. That's how they got the stop. Insane stuff. Amazing effort from Jared Verse. Tell me if you've heard that one before. Sorry, guys. It is allergy season for your boy. But that was still one of the best plays that I saw in the entirety of the NFL weekend for Week 6. The Rams opened up the second half, and Stafford is still struggling to connect with Davante Adams. There's a lot of times in the first half where he tried to target him, and the ball's going the opposite direction of where Davante's running. This is the part where I mentioned the Ravens turned the ball over 3 times in this game. They had an interception from Cooper Rush, which was in the first half that, not a surprise. Come on, man. It's Cooper Rush, right? Cooper Rush with the Ravens, a team that is built the exact opposite way that Cooper Rush plays football, right? A fumble from Zay Flowers, a touchdown 2 plays later from the Rams, and then another Zay Flowers fumble. So it was a jet sweep. So Zay Flowers is running full speed, right? And they toss the ball back, and Zay kind of has it in his hands, but then drops it. So I don't know who you credit that to. I probably should have checked. They probably credit it to Zay because he touched the ball. This is another example of the Ravens-Chiefs game, by the way, that we talked about before last week. The Ravens offense put the Ravens defense in a horrible position the entirety of this game, and still expected good things to happen. They only gave up 17 points, which gives me hope that the Ravens defense may have figured it out. They got a good amount of pressure throughout the course of this one as well. I like that. The Ravens defense gets fucked 3 different times by the Ravens offense, and they still got 2 stops, by the way. So out of those 3 turnovers, only one of them turned into a touchdown. All the other ones got stopped. They held the Rams to 17 points overall in a pretty high quality defensive game for them as well. But it gives you faith that when Lamar comes back, maybe they'll finally put it together. And maybe, just maybe, if they don't, it looks like they may. Honestly, man, they said in the press conference, Harbaugh said that they were always going to start or going to play Snoop Huntley at some point during this one. He goes out there and he plays, and all of a sudden the Ravens can pass the ball. They actually got to the red zone twice with Snoop Huntley in at quarterback, and he had their second best drive of the entire day. It just didn't turn into points. It ends off an unblocked sack and a throwaway on 4th down. So that was life comes at you fast, especially when they're not blocked by your tackles. The Ravens get the ball back again, and Huntley is a little too much hesitation, which is a little reminiscent of Justin Fields. And on back-to-back plays, the Rams kneel it out after the Ravens stall out. So the NFC West still remains a very dangerous place, and the Ravens still are losing. At this rate, the chances of the Ravens winning the AFC North are getting smaller and smaller, even though we're so early on in the season. The Steelers are only 1.5 games ahead. If they had beaten the Bengals, they would have been ahead by 3.5 games. But still, it looks like they still need more help. They need to figure out something else, and I don't know what it is because I don't get paid millions of dollars to figure out how to fix NFL teams. But one thing I did see that looked like it helped a ton, Kyle Hamilton spent a lot more time in the box for the Ravens up front, and I think that was important. Moving on to the final category, though, this is what we're here for category. These are the 3 best games that I saw this entire weekend. The Colts played the Arizona Cardinals. This game I put here because it was a prime example of life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Was that a terrible Forrest Gump impersonation? Anyway, legitimately, if you're a person who pulled up to this game, you probably were in the same vein of the people who watched Titans Raiders to a certain degree. I thought this was going to be a blowout. 31-27 says different. So if you're wondering what happened, the Colts are still good. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they had to play their backup quarterback, was Jacoby Brissett. A little deceptive that Jacoby Brissett is the backup QB, right? Because it's not just like it's any random backup. Jacoby Brissett has seen a lot, done a lot, and played a lot of football for a long time. He's been in the league since 2016. Crazy. It seems like just yesterday the brisket was... So, story time. I'm from Houston. Jacoby Brissett's first start ever as an NFL quarterback. This is when he was a third-string QB for the Patriots. All of us thought the Texans were going to get their first win versus the Patriots ever. And went to New England, lost to Jacoby Brissett. One of the most embarrassing Mondays in the history of Texans fandom. And that's saying a lot. There have been a lot of bad Mondays being a Texans fan. Anyway, Colts play the Cardinals. Jacoby Brissett comes out here, starts off a little shaky, starts off a little rough. And then all of a sudden the magic hits. The offensive line for the Cardinals plays better than I've seen them play all season, and maybe because Jacoby Brissett was getting that ball out. Because he is you know what comes with age and wisdom? Bad joints, bad knees, delicate sensibilities, I guess you can say. There's a reason that Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Eli Manning, when they got into the later years of their career, when they saw D linemen coming, they just went down on the ground. They let them tag them out. There's a reason for them. It's because they coming fast and they coming hard, and I mean that. But yeah, the Colts are looking like the most complete team in the NFL. This is just another example of like how good they were. Their defense didn't have a spectacular day, but it was because the Cardinals' offense was actually that good today. See, the Forrest Gump started a little rough. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't seen Forrest Gump in a long time, and a lot of it is due to I'll say it. I don't watch TV like that anymore. I watch one show that is currently on live. I watch two shows that are currently on live television, and that is The Challenge, which airs on NTV, and Abbott Elementary. And I do not watch either one of them on actual television. I watch them on streaming services after they've been recorded. The reason I saw Forrest Gump so many times as a kid is because it would always be on TNT, and I don't even watch TNT anymore. I watch shows that are on TNT on different networks. I think it's like HBO Max or whatever, but I don't watch TNT anymore. I haven't watched it in a long time. Moving on, the better run game. The best run game. They're destroying zone defenses overall, and this is about the Colts. And the defense looks almost unbeatable most weekends. This is one of the few weekends where the Colts defense, because I still think this is tied for the most points that they've surrendered, because this is the same number of points that the Broncos scored against the Colts a couple weeks ago when they won 28-27. So, yeah. Still have not given up more than 27 points, which is still kind of high. But overall, their defense has been amazing in terms of like generating pressure with Nick Cross and a bunch of other defensive players too. The Cardinals are down. Their starting running back in James Conner, he's out for the season. Their backup running back gets attacked by their head coach. We all saw that. That was really weird. Emery DeMarcado, who, by the way, does play in this game. He gets one carry. Talk about petty. He did run. It was a 72-yard run in the NFL, and whatever. I understand that he showed him the video prior to the game, told people not to do this, and they still ended up doing it. Anyway, Kyler Murray's injured. He's out in this one. Everything points to the Cardinals getting absolutely smoked in this one. Instead, they go toe-to-toe with the Colts all game, and we're leading in this game multiple times. The brisket is back. Low and slow. He is slow, but he's not low. He's like 6'4", and I think that was actually the difference. He saw the offense from a different perspective, and I think Jonathan Gannon is going to use this game as an example that at the end of the season, when it comes time to decide whether he gets to keep his job, if he does make it that far, I think he's going to use the example of the one time that I used a quarterback that was a relatively normal height. We almost beat the best team in the league, which we think the Colts are right now, right? He got out to a little bit of a rough start there. The Colts pressure got home because I think they got a sack within like the first 3 plays of this game. The Cardinals committed to the run game, though. Despite not having Trey Benson or James Conner, they actively were not playing Emery DeMarcado. Like I said, he had 1 carry this entire time. They only ended up with 70 rush yards in total, but the brisket also had 19 yards on top of that, right? They had Michael Carter out there doing this thing. He was key in terms of like dampening the pressure that the Colts were generating, because they were having a tough time, one, wrangling him up, and then two, knowing when the Cardinals were actually going to run the ball, because I'm assuming Jacoby Brissett was making changes on the field. He's been with the team this entire time. He's not Joe Flacco where he just showed up this week. The Colts had multiple plays where they dropped so deep in their zone that Carter was essentially uncovered. They were banking on the D-line to get to Jacoby Brissett, and it just didn't happen. The offensive line for the Cardinals held up vast majority of this game, and it allowed for them to get the ball to Carter, who had like a 20-yard reception at one point, and it was literally a swing route, and he kept running until he got hit by a defender, which was way further down the field because of how far they had dropped off. So the Colts offensively were once again carried by Jonathan Taylor, and the offensive line was absolutely destroying up front all game. Down JT. Outside of that, he was running free and getting past the line of scrimmage every single time he touched the ball. A good chunk of that is credited to the fact that they were running 12 personnel. The Colts are one of the 12 personnel teams in the NFL where they run double tight end. And I don't know if you heard or not, Tyler Warren is pretty fucking good. Right? Second touchdown, he gets a touchdown in this one. That's back-to-back weeks with the touchdown for him, and I think he's on pace to get 1,000 yards in this season. As of right now, we're in week 6, and he's got over 300 yards. It's pretty good. The tight ends being utilized in the formation created wider rushing lanes for the running backs, and it created double teams in combo blocks, if you will, on the ends. And then on top of that, the tight ends are faster than offensive linemen. So once they combo block with a tackle, if they're going left, they shoot up the field. They're getting to the linebackers, and then the only person who can make the tackle is a safety. And Jonathan Taylor's pretty good at crossing up anybody who gets in front of him, let alone a person who's significantly smaller than him as well. Most of the time, they were even getting to the safeties in this one. So it was pretty tough. They put too much pressure on the linebackers to go out there and make absolutely ridiculous plays because they couldn't do it the entirety of the game. They barely were able to do it even a little bit throughout the course of this one. Daniel Jones had some really, really nice throws, specifically to Josh Downs and Tyler Warren, who seemed like his two guys that he's really counting on. Like I said, Jacoby had the third most passing yards ever in his career. He had a great game in this one. They get like 354 total yards, passing yards in this game. And that was without Marvin Harrison Jr., who, by the way, smacked his head so fucking hard on the turf. If you didn't see the clip, he runs a crossing route, and Jacoby throws it up high because the DB is in like really good trail position, and he wants Marvin Harrison to use his body to seal off the defensive back, make the catch. He throws it behind him a little bit, and Marvin jumps up in the air, catches it, and the DB wraps him up from the waist. He hits the ground, and it's just like he smacks his head straight on the back of the turf. So it was bad because Marvin Harrison can jump really high. It was tough. Me personally, I thought it was surprising that the Colts offensive line, or the Cardinals offensive line, held up so well considering how much we see Kyler Murray flushed out of the pocket and running down the sideline. It makes you wonder, maybe the Colts had a bad day up front, but they still had sacks versus Jacoby Brissett. But this is, the Cardinals have played some of the best defensive lines in the NFL so far. They've played against the Rams, the Seahawks, and now against the Colts. And in those two latter cases, those are divisional opponents, right? They looked like they were in a pretty bad spot when Kyler Murray was out there playing quarterback. It was weird, man. They had a tough time when they played against the Panthers, and the Panthers don't have like a superstar pass rusher or anything like that, but they still were struggling with Kyler Murray. On the Colts side, this is the most I've seen their defense get worked by an opponent. It felt like some of the calls on defense were just banking on the D lineman to go out there and kill Jacoby, and they just couldn't do it. They actually got burned multiple times throughout the course of this game by sending extra people to try and pressure Jacoby Brissett. Late in the game, on a potential game-winning drive, it's 31-27. The score is the score. The Colts show up in a big way in their own red zone as the Cardinals are really close because they need a touchdown to be able to win this one, right? 31-27. Kwity Paye has his second sack of the day, and is on third down to kick the Cardinals out of to put them into like 4th and 15 with 1 minute to go. And then a great performance from the Cardinals up front, but the fourth down play does not go their way, right? The Colts and the Buccaneers are now the only two teams in the NFL who are 5-1. There's a lot of teams who are 4-2 only 2 teams are 5-1. That's pretty cool. The Bears versus the Commanders. This is the most recent game that I watched. I literally watched it an hour before I started this podcast. The Bears and Commanders, I thought this was a great snapshot of the development of 2 teams, let alone 2 quarterbacks, right? Jaden Daniels was really good in his rookie season. He's coming off injury relatively recently, and this game, 25-24 in favor of the Bears. It does come down to at the end a crazy fumble situation due to the wetness of the rain. But if you want to talk about fluke things happening, catching a Hail Mary to win a game last year was kind of fluky as well. Not kind of fluky, but it was kind of crazy as well. Overall, I enjoyed watching this game every single step of the way. The Bears really, their run game wise, they did a great job up front of wrangling up the linebackers. Like their offensive linemen were getting up to the second level so often in this game. It set DeAndre Swift up really well. It set Amiga Magani up really well as well. He had a couple of good catches and runs in this one. But for the most part, man, when it came down to it, they got the lead and they were able to run this game. They were able to run this game into position for them to win, because they were able to run the ball the entirety of this game, right? That was the most important part. Jaden Daniels throwing a ton of dimes throughout the course of this one. Outside of Jaquan Brisker finally getting an interception this season. Jaquan Brisker is the superstar safety that the Bears had last season. Finally got a pick this season and was able to run it back and put the Bears in a really good situation. But for the most part, when I watched this game, the cool part is that this was clearly shades of the Lions offense, right? Like they ran the ball so efficiently, so well throughout the course of this game that it took so much pressure off Caleb Williams to go out there and have to be a superstar against a really good team, because the Commanders did make it to the NFC Championship game a year ago, which is wild to say out loud considering where we are right now. It's not like they're bad or anything, but it's just wild to like look at that team and be like, they were 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl, despite how good the Eagles were, right? This game is, if there was like one thing that you wish would happen like every single year, obviously, a lot of people wish the Cowboys playing on Thanksgiving happened every single year. Me, on the other hand, I have much better things to do in my time. I don't want to watch a public massacre. Anyway, the Bears, the Commanders. I would love to see the third rendition of this and see where these 2 teams are next year, because it has come down to one defining play both times. And I'd love to see what the third round of this looks like. Maybe they both make it to the playoffs, and they face off against each other. It's just so rare to be able to see 2 teams that are in relatively similar positions, right? They were in relatively similar positions. They're just slightly offset. The Bears season went completely sideways after they lost this game, according to a really popular Bears fan. Have to wonder if the same thing happens to the Commanders. They've been there's been some questions about their defense. I don't think their defense is all that bad. I think what happens is they give up a lot of explosive plays, but when it comes to like play in, play out kind of stuff, they make explosive plays on defense. They generate turnovers, all that kind of stuff like that. But this game was really enjoyable to watch. One, because I know that it's really good to see that the Bears are in a better position than they were a year ago, like definitively, in comparison to where the Commanders are. They're a front runner, technically. Even though the Super Bowl champion is in their division, they are supposed to be a threat to win the Super Bowl, or be a contender to be a Super Bowl contender. Be a contender to be a contender, if you will. Last game on the schedule, buckle up, bitch. Anyway, the Carolina Panthers played the Dallas Cowboys. This game was kind of crazy, I'm not going to lie. It was a lot of fun. You didn't have to be a fan of either one of these teams to really appreciate what was happening. So much stuff happened. I'm just going to check off my notes on this one. The Panthers have played 6 games this season. I think 4 out of the 6 games they've gotten an opening drive touchdown. They didn't get one on this one. I think it was a field goal off the jump. Rico Dowdle does get started early. He has like 20 yards on this first drive. And the Cowboys offense looks like it was kind of cooking early here. George Pickens gets a full extension hurdle that becomes an instant highlight for the season, if you will. And he's probably going to be looking at that one years from now. That was a really good one. But it is going to be crazy when CeeDee Lamb comes back because you have to wonder, how do things shake out? How are things going to really shake out? You know what I mean? Are we going to see NFL youngboy crash out? I doubt it. I think Dak is going to be more than ready to have multiple guys that he can pass the ball to, because when you watch the Cowboys play, it is Jake Ferguson. It's Jake Ferguson, Schoonmaker sometimes, very rarely Schoonmaker, and George Pickens, and generic running back that is in, usually Javonte Williams, who is having an interesting year after the really good season he had with the Broncos last year. Whatever. This drive ends with the drive after the crazy George Pickens hurdle play ends with a field goal, which is kind of wild, but not surprising, because that's kind of, the Cowboys have been a team that has a lot of flashes in the pan and then kind of disappoints. That's just kind of what their franchise is all about, right? Like a lot of flash and pomp and circumstance, and then they disappoint. Because remember, guys, this year's their year. We'll see. The Panthers get a weird interception. Tyron McMillan runs an inside slant. This is the second possession for the Panthers in this game, and it pops off his hands. I think it was because it was like slightly raining out there, and people still had their gloves on. It pops off his hands and right into Donovan Wilson's hands. Donovan Wilson, I think, had like 8 interceptions last year. He has his first one in Week 6 of this season, and Rico Dowdle, who is a former Cowboys player, who's actually, like, legitimately at one point last year, he was the best offensive player on the field a good chunk of those games. He was pretty salty about the Cowboys not re-signing him, and I think he'd probably be pretty salty about ending up with the Carolina Panthers if it wasn't for how much burn he's getting on the field and how much, the offense is starting to be generated around him. Anyway, he gets a personal foul in the process of the return, because he literally just, whoever is running in front of Donovan Wilson, he just spears him in the back out of bounds, and they give an extra 15 yards. This time the Cowboys score. I think this one is very fitting. It is a fullback touchdown. They throw it to a guy who's literally their fullback and a special teamer, and he gets his first touchdown in the NFL. So that's pretty dope. Tyron McMillan gets his first touchdown in the NFL. The next drive, the Cowboys defense honestly struggled to correctly cover the backside of a ton of run plays. And I actually had a friend of mine. I don't know if I'm going to say his name. I had a friend of mine. I don't have a reason to hide his name. He's not like a secret agent or anything. His name's Khalif. He is a Cowboys fan. He lives in Florida. And he sent me a clip, and it was about my guy, Kenneth Murray. And I had to be like, hey, I know Kenneth Murray. He's off my guy. And there were multiple times where I saw Kenneth be confused about, not confused. Kenneth was not in the position that is typically assigned to a middle linebacker when it comes to run fits. I don't know if that is something the Cowboys are teaching him to do or something like that. Or if he was just struggling to identify the gap he was supposed to be in. There was one where he slid the exact opposite direction, and this also goes for the other linebackers as well. Slid to the exact opposite direction of where the run was going. I do have faith in Kenneth, because more often than not, he actually does make the right play on defense. It was just a couple of examples throughout the course of this game that a really good running back got loose because of some bad defensive rotations, not just from him, but from everybody. Combine that with the fact that the Cowboys weren't really like getting like a ton of pressure throughout the course of this one, throughout the course of this entire game. But overall, I think they did pretty well in this game, considering the situation, where I personally believe anytime they can hold the team under 40 points, they're doing a great job. And that's not just Kenneth. That is the entirety of the defense, because they have a ton of talent, but for some reason it is just not working this season. The final drive of the half goes to the Panthers in a 2nd and long in their own territory. They're hoping for a field goal with 45 seconds on the clock. 45 seconds on the clock. They're down 17-10 at this point. Xavier Legette catches a check down, and then mid-tackle tries to throw the ball to Rico Dowdle. Rico was like, what the hell's going on? It's also thrown behind him. Rico picks it up, and then a D lineman runs in from behind him that was chasing down Bryce Young, who, by the way, Bryce Young had a pretty good game, who was chasing Bryce Young, ran up behind him, popped the ball out from Rico's hands, and then Xavier Legette, who was previously on the ground, got up in enough time to go over, recovered the fumble from his own bad lateral. And then it was 3rd and 13. Anyway, the Panthers nailed a 50-plus yard field goal. Right. Like, come on. Little dramatic. They double dipped though. They did get a touchdown to start off the second half. Jimmy Horn catches a wide open pass, but unfortunately steps out of bounds. Yes, Jimmy Horn is related to that Jimmy Horn. In case you were wondering, in case nobody told you, Jimmy Horn and J.C. Horn, who are the J.C. Horn is the safety for the Carolina Panthers and a really talented defensive back overall. He usually gets assigned to like the best wide receiver for the other team in a lot of cases. But Jimmy Horn and J.C. Horn are brothers. And J.C. didn't grow up with Jimmy Horn Sr., if I remember correctly. You have to look that up. Anyway, J.C. Horn is one of those guys that he started a YouTube account when it was time for his draft process. And I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of him just walking around with like a 4K camera and not really doing much. And setting up for his pro day, he hangs out with this guy named, his last name is Oliver. He's like this NFL trainer. I'm sure he's a cool dude, but there was a lot of stuff that was kind of strange in it that he was kind of doing. Like every time like JC did something that he didn't like, he was like, oh man, I was just about to tell you to do the opposite of that. So weird. I see him on Instagram all the time. He trains like a ton of NFL players. And he doesn't have his own facility or anything like that, but he trains like legitimate NFL players, and people believe in him. So he must be doing something right. The Panthers have played good defense for the vast majority of this game, in my opinion, and they choose to lock the fuck up in this one. The D-line bodied pretty much every single running back who touched the ball. So it's not RJ Harvey. It's Javonte Williams. And who is the other running back for the Cowboys this year? I keep forgetting. I only think about Javonte Williams because every time I see him, I'm like, Javonte Williams from the Broncos, now on the Cowboys. Anyway, anybody who was running the ball, that touched the ball behind the line of scrimmage, got cracked by the defense of the Panthers. This is some of the best defense I've seen them play all season. And they played some pretty good defense. Remember, this is a defense that already has a shutout versus Michael Penix and the Atlanta Falcons. Which made it a little bit funnier that their center kept the Cowboys center at random points during the game kept like trying to get like extra shoves in after the play was over. It was really weird. To me personally, I had his name written down. I will say this, you probably know who I'm talking about because he wears the jersey number 67 in week 1 for his intro. He did the little 6-7 motion and then turned it into like, I've never seen an offensive lineman have like a hype video like he does. Especially like, I think he's a rookie. Anyway, check that guy out. He's interesting. It was a little much. As a former offensive lineman, he was trying to like, it wasn't cheap shots. It was just like, dude, like you're trying to get somebody to hit you back so you can get the personal foul. It's just not going to work. Like I said, George Pickens is really going to hate it when CeeDee Lamb comes back, but we'll see. I have faith in George Pickens and in CeeDee Lamb, both to be able to be a great wide receiver duo like we see with the Cincinnati Bengals, except they have a better quarterback in Dak Prescott. He went for 168 yards off 9 catches in this game. He had a 34-yard touchdown at one point that started on the opposite side of the field from where he scored, and he split like 3 defensive backs with just raw speed. And it makes you wonder how somebody couldn't figure out how to get him the ball when he was with the Steelers. And strangely enough, the Panthers responded after the Cowboys took the lead off of the George Pickens touchdown. Rico killed the Cowboys on first down pretty much all game, so they spent most of this game in short yardage second and third down. Because Rico was getting like 7-8 yards on first down throughout this entire game. They rode Rico Dowdle all the way to the end zone again. Tyron McMillan does end up with another touchdown, so he gets his first multi-touchdown game. A lot of people been really hyped about Tyron McMillan. I will say this, for all you who are hyped, stop doing it. Not the hype. Totally respect the hype. Stop trying to call Tyron McMillan T-Mac. As a Houstonian, stop it. There's only one T-Mac, and every basketball fan on the face of the fucking planet agrees. Tracy McGrady is the only T-Mac. Tyron McMillan's just going to have to get a different nickname. All right? He's playing for the Carolina Panthers. You might have a chance if you play for the Dallas Cowboys because he'd be like on the biggest stage in all of football, let alone the sport. But you think you're about to rewrite sports history, and it's not going to work. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen because I need you, random viewer on the internet, to do that as well. Stop people from calling Tyron McMillan T-Mac. Bryce played in this game, like I said, he played really well. He played like he wasn't scared, which is really rare sometimes because it feels like a lot of times when he's in the pocket, he's freaked out because everybody's like twice his size, right? He played like he wasn't scared. He had 2 passes that went for over 30 yards in this one. He had 2 passes that went for over 20 yards, and then he had 4 other passes that went for 10-plus yards. He had some ugly moments with the game tied up at 27-all, but the final drive with some help from the run game, he came in pretty fucking clutch. Like he was dialing it up. It was the glimpses of Bryce Young that you drafted him to see all the time, but it's just not happening all the time right now, which is understandable, especially considering like the Panthers are still a work in progress. But to sit here and say from what we saw last year to this year, we're seeing more of the flashes that we saw than we did towards the end of the season, right? Like towards the end of the season where everybody's kind of like dialing it back and like maybe some of the teams that were playing, they're like giving up on the season already because they weren't going to make the playoffs, and in comes Bryce Young going out there and dealing it. This is early in the year versus the Dallas Cowboys, who are still trying to win the game, who are still trying to go out there and do their thing. And Bryce came up big in a clutch situation because for whatever you have to say, the Cowboys and the Panthers right now are either level with talent or the Panthers have a slight advantage. In my mind, the Panthers have a slight advantage in terms of talent, but that's just my opinion. It was clutch, man. It was important, and it's really important overall to recognize when Bryce does well, because everybody spends all this time shitting on him when he sucks, because he fucks up sometimes. He's just like every other young quarterback. He's supposed to be bad. Dylan Gabriel is supposed to be bad. And if you haven't learned your lesson now, ask yourself like how Joe Flacco got to where he is. Ask yourself about Jacoby Brissett. Ask yourself about Geno Smith, Sam Darnold. How many other examples of these quarterbacks that they just got time? Like they were quarterbacks who started off in bad situations and they were able to. Daniel Jones is an MVP contender, and last year we thought he was like legitimately the 31st worst quarterback in the NFL. Time has this magical, but time and situation are so important, especially when it comes to younger players. And Bryce Young may not necessarily be in a perfect situation right now. Not many people are, right? Like that's life. But to sit here, I want to sit here and address the fact that he looks like he is playing better. And I think that's really important because it helps the Panthers be successful. And also, it's kind of crazy how Dave Canales keeps finding like these other, like he's got like a type of running back that he's into, right? Like Rashad White, Bucky Irving, when he's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Chuba Hubbard, who's coming back, and then Rico Dowdle doing his thing. Like he's in a short time in positions of power in football. He's got like 4 running backs that have looked really good in the short amount of time that he's been kind of doing his thing. So, but yeah, man, that's all I got. I'm done being sniffly into the microphone and all this kind of stuff like that. I'm done drinking water because my throat is scratchy. That's all I got. I thought it was really cool. Week 6 was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching it, even though I did have to cram yesterday and today to be able to watch all the games. I had a lot of fun watching them all back. I will say I got to do better about my sleep schedule on Saturday because your boy be sleepy on Sunday, and I don't be taking notes like I should be. Also the whiskey. Maybe the whiskey, I think, is the bigger impact on that. Anyway, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook. Like and subscribe to the video. I appreciate it. For everybody who stayed all the way to the end to watch this whole thing. Apparently, I can multicast to different stuff. So now we'll see what happens if I go back to casting on Twitch. Also, fingers crossed that I didn't get hacked, guys. Like I said, before the pod started today, I got logged out of everything on my computer and then instantaneously logged back in. Outside of that, man, stay hydrated. And most importantly, go home, Roger. Before the song ends, shout out to Sergeant Major 420 for sitting in the chat the entirety of the episode. I really appreciate that, man, for going back and forth. Thank you. Oh wait, you can't see me giving you the thumbs up. Appreciate you, bro. Bro or gal. Actually, you know what? Bro is universal. It's not a gender. Bro is genderless. Thank you. And here's the music. Everybody loves the music.